Good evening, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome back to the NXTGEN Racing GT3 Championship Season 2 for 2021. And tonight marks round 6 on the 12-round calendar. We're at the end of the first half of the season, and we couldn't have a more impressive race to come. It's the first of the two super endurance races for the season, where we only have the one race, and there is a lot at stake here at the circuit. Indeed, at the British circuit tonight, the legendary British circuit, you can imagine it's going to be intense, it's going to be fast, and a lot is on the line up and down the field, both within the pro and the amateur classes, where every point matters. As you can see on the schedule there, compared to our usual system of having a qualifying session, then a sprint race and a feature race, tonight we only have the one race, and that will be at 8:15 British summertime this evening, or UTC +1, and that is the 2-hour feature race, the super endurance race, where all of our drivers will be going for broke and trying to get the best possible result, and we'll talk why this race is a little bit more critical perhaps than some of the other races on the calendar very shortly. But before we do, you've got myself in the commentary box tonight. That is Paul Walsh, also known as TX141 or Britnessbit, depending on what media you follow me on. And this broadcast tonight is being brought to you live via 3 different media platforms. Firstly, the official NXTGEN Racing YouTube channel. That's NXTGEN Racing on YouTube. Or alternatively, on the NXTGEN Racing Facebook group. If you look us up on Facebook, under groups, we're NXTGEN Racing and the broadcast is there live. Or if you're a Twitch user, you can always tune in via my personal Twitch channel. That is TX141 on Twitch. Now, of course, this series would not be possible without the input from our 2 senior partners. That's Apex Racing Academy and also Next Level Racing. And starting with one and then moving on to the other, let's begin with Apex Racing Academy and introduce them. So, who are Apex Racing Academy, you ask? Well, Apex Racing Academy is not just a setup shop. They are dedicated to making you better at iRacing with services, access to drivers, and features not found on other driving schools and academies. Working with them will see you connecting with pros like never before. You can learn how to prepare for a race, build setups, improve lap times, and understand how to use telemetry tools such as VRS. Every week they host multiple sessions where members can join the coaches and take advantage of their group coaching sessions. In partnership with SDK Gaming, all the data provided will be automatically synced directly to your PC. There's no need to go hunting for a setup, replay or ghost files. The data is right there when you turn the simulator on. Why not sign up now if you're interested at apexracingac.com. That's apexracingac.com. Now, we're very grateful to have Apex Racing Academy on board with us as well as our senior partners, and we now come over to our other partner, of course, of Next Level Racing. Now, Next Level Racing, founded in 2009, is the world's leading simulation brand. We're revolutionising simulation with its industry-leading product range, with a clear focus on innovation and quality to meet the demanding needs of sim racers. Next Level Racing's designs and technology shall take your sim racing experience to the next level. If you want to know more about their products, be sure to head to their official website, that's nextlevelracing.com, today for further information. That's nextlevelracing.com. Now, we're very grateful, of course, to have both our senior partners on board, and we also do have a number of other partners working with us, such as Mark Sykes Designs and also Joyce Design. But whilst we're at the circuit and with the build-up to come of 25 minutes until we go racing, it's only appropriate that we now take a look back at the standings after the opening 5 rounds. So in the pro category, what we can see here is we do have a runaway leader. That is Billy Fletcher, leading at the moment on 357 points. Of course, this is without drop scores being accounted for, but we're not quite there yet where drop scores really start to have a major effect on the championship outcome. But after the opening 5 rounds, with what was another strong performance at the French circuit Le Mans last time out, where it was fast and furious and a lot of slipstream in action, Fletcher bringing home a pair of solid results, albeit not able to quite get the win in either of the races, but still finishing in a strong second place in both races, and we can see they're picking up the fastest lap in race number 2. Harry Melvin in P2 finding himself having a difficult day at the office at the French circuit last time out, and 215 points in second place at the moment, and really has been the best of the rest in the pro category outside of Fletcher. But you can see that in P3, with his recent joining in the series, Matt Caruana really starting to build up a lot of momentum, having taken pole position, the fastest lap in race number 1, and the win in both races in the pro category at Le Mans. And indeed, for Caruana, it seems as though the sky is the limit, and working with Fletcher, of course, both drivers are racing for the same team. The two of them worked together in order to pull off a stellar 1-2 in both of the races, and Caruana being at the head of the spear. But then we have to look a little bit further down, and whilst we can see our top 3 have broken away a little bit, it's Paul King in P4 as it currently stands on 151 points, who is leading the charge of the chasing field after the podium positions. And Paul King having a difficult time at Le Mans last time out, only picking up 2 points in the feature race and 17 points in the sprint race. A good performance in the shorter race, but indeed it didn't quite work out in the longer race of the two. And we can see that with a lot of our big names in the pro category, particularly in the top 10, how it was a difficult one. Kenny Herriman's there, and also Jaco Boshoff in particular having a disastrous sprint race, and also Ben Hicks there only picking up 8 points after a night of racing. But a shout out to Jeremy DeBover there in P10, the driver of the day at Le Mans, and picking up 2 very strong finishes, the most notable one being that rather intensive battle for what was a 5th place, but in the end he finished in 6th place, but it was very close. It was nip and tuck throughout in the feature race, and definitely one of the biggest highlights of the season to see him do everything he could to try and hold on to the position. And looking further down outside of our top 10 there, we've got Andrew Lovesey, only the best part of 7 points clear of Ed Lack as it currently stands. As we can see from P11 down to P20, there is a sizable deficit to the top 10, and really it is a squabble for who can mount a campaign to get themselves into that top 10. And whilst Lovesey has been looking strong, as has Lack, Stephen Norman having a good performance in the sprint race in P13 last time out, we can see they're picking up another 10 points and starting to build some momentum. Now, we should point out we do also have a new pro driver join us tonight, and that is Bobby Thompson, who's joined us as this round and maybe join us for the full season, but that's yet to be confirmed. So you will see Bobby Thompson out on circuit in the pro category tonight. So we have 21 pro drivers racing out on circuit. And as we come over to the amateur class, we can see that the field here is a lot more condensed, and indeed we really do have a massive title fight building up on our hands right now, with George Bland leading on 239 points. It was not a smooth day at the office for George Bland at the French circuit last time out. The McLaren driver having a difficult day, picking up that 25 points in the sprint race. What was a good sprint race performance, but in the feature, nothing quite went to plan, and as a result, on 239 points right now, he is being hauled in by Alexander Patak, who went on the full attack and picked up the maximum points haul in the amateur class of what was in the end 115 points for the fastest lap in both races, the pole position lap in the amateur class, and the wins in both of them as well. And Patak, you could hear it in his voice last time out, absolutely exhausted, but that exhaustion has proven very providential in the fact that he is on the charge right now, and he's surpassed Ollie Wayne on 199 points. But remember, Wayne was not racing last week, so as a result, it was a great opportunity for other drivers to find themselves into that winning position, and Patak really did secure the points where Wayne was absent. We can see Mikel Andreasen there in P4, 172 points to his name, 35 points in the sprint race last time out for what was the 2nd place in the sprint, but a disastrous feature race. It all went horribly wrong, and it was just not going to work out for the Dane, and as a result now he has to find himself back into the fight for those podium positions as he is the primary chaser. But we look a little bit further down there, and we can see Matthew Emmons on what is 113 points going into this one. And really, when I spoke to Emmons briefly before he was getting into the car, I should say, to go out for practice, building up to tonight's race, and he was saying to me about the fact it's time for no more mistakes. He's cost himself a lot of points, he feels, through silly little mistakes, and it's starting to build up. And whilst he's hoping for a good performance at Silverstone tonight, he really does feel as though he needs to iron out those incidents and those mistakes which have proven costly. And indeed, a number of our amateur drivers talking about mistakes costing them good points, and we'll come on to them later. But you can see there, Jürgen Nockert lining up in P10 as it currently stands in the championship for the amateurs on 80 points there. And only 7 points of Arjan Bakker, and definitely gaining a lot of momentum is Nockert right now, in the fact Bakker had a difficult night at Le Mans, whereas Nockert really had a strong night. But then again, Nigel Stock in P11 with the recent car switch, it worked out for him at Le Mans, and he's up to 66 points. Of course, dropping points because of the car switch, going from the Mercedes to Lamborghini Lamborghini, but he is building up that momentum, and it is impressive to see. And Mark Sykes, with his perhaps his strongest pair of performances over the course of the season so far, getting himself up into P13 in the Lamborghini on 45 points now. How far can he go? Can he mount a challenge to get into that top 10? And then last but not least in the amateur class there, we do have Tom Porter in P19 on 4 points. And I should also point out we do have a new driver join us in the amateur class tonight, and I believe his name is Aaron Thompson, and he will be joining us at least for this race, although whether he's joining us for the rest of the season, I've not quite had it confirmed yet. So we are expecting to have 20 amateur drivers attending where possible tonight. Of course, some drivers may not be able to make it due to personal circumstances, but the field is continuing to grow day by day, and we love to see it. So coming away from our standings then and onto the circuit, we are at Silverstone tonight. The circuit in Towcester, well, sorry, that's probably now you say it's Towcester, as you can see in North Hampshire, United Kingdom, and we note that it's 18 corners. We are at the full GP circuit there, starting off, of course, with the run from Club at turn 18, down towards Abbey at turn 1, Farm Curve at turn 2, then run out towards Village, the Loop and Aintree, that's 3, 4 and 5, and then you have the run down the Wellington Straight to turn 6 at Brooklands, Luffield that follows, then Woodcote, before heading up towards Copse Corner, turn 9, a very tricky corner, Copse Corner. Indeed, that's where the old starting point on the circuit used to be pre-2012, but we are starting, of course, with the modernised layout here, and then you've got the legendary run through turns 10 through to 14, which runs through Maggots, Beckett's and into Chapel Corner before the Hangar Straight. Then we've got Stowe Corner at turn 15, the run through Vale down to 16 and 17, and then finally coming around to Club Curve once again to complete the lap. And shortly we will be taking a reference lap, but thank you to simracingwiki.com for providing us with the track legend as always. And also we just want to take a quick moment to say hello to you guys and girls who are tuning in. Of course, we can see that we do have KTMs in the Facebook chat talking about it being a double points night tonight, and we can also see that 6000 Kashmir fan, the YouTube chat there, saying good luck to Batak and telling Batak to relax, in fact, as is Stefan Ramusen, and wishing him all the best, and also to wish Mikkel all the best. And Kashmir fan, if you do want to join, do get in touch with the Next Gen Racing team at our official website, that's nextgenracing.com, to find out more about how you can join this series going forward if you are interested. And that is an open invite to anyone attending, so long as you pay the sign-up fee, you can join mid-season. But moving away from sign-up fees, let's bring you a reference lap, and today's reference lap is brought to you by the pro driver of Paul King. So coming out to turn number 17 here, you're going to see as he comes out of 17 in the Lamborghini GT3 here, he's going to be full attack through turn number 18 through Club Corner and heading up towards the start finish line. He's beginning the lap right now, and in the long run up towards turn 1 here, going into the right hand, we'll see a little bit of braking here, but attacking that apex curve, cut as much as possible before going to Farm Curve there, turn 2, and going full attack through there before stamping on the anchors down into turn 3 here. And he's got to get the car very settled as he goes through the corner, and you'll note those raised sausage curbs there on the apexes, which if they're hit, they will destabilise the car. Going through 4 here, and now starting to build up a huge amount of speed and continue to keep the throttle in full flat out here through turn number 5 and heading on to the Wellington Straight here, and just continue to build up that speed before coming into the braking zone for turn number 6. Now, difficult corner, turn number 6, an extremely late apex here, and watch how late it is. You're waiting for it, you're waiting for it, you're waiting for it, and there's the apex, and he turns nicely across the apex curve there before going into turn 7, staying nice and tight to line here. It's a deceptive curve turn 7 because it's a raised in the road surface before it drops away, and that's when you get on the throttle once the drop begins before charging through turn number 8 right now. Coming onto the old starting grid, which was used pre-2012 as we said earlier, and now making his way down towards turn number 9 into what is one of the most challenging corners on the circuit right now. Trail braking it in, and in 4th gear now starting to build up the throttle beyond the apex there, and now charging up towards Maggots, Beckett's and Copse Corner here. Turns 10 through to 14, lovely sequence, left into right he goes, and attacking into left-hander before starting to bring down the speed through the right-hander, then back into the tighter left-hander here before going into the right. As he comes out of 13, Copse Corner, the turn at number 14 here, full attack through 14, and that's the charge down the Hangar Straight all the way up to the very, very distant looking corner of turn at number 15 here, and again an unsighted apex here, and what you'll see as he goes into the braking zone looking for that 100 metre board and the 50 board, but going at the 100 metre board, and a little bit of snap oversteer there. You could see the car starting to unsettle, and the driver having to steady the car was king as he now comes out of 15 into 16 and 17, two very slow corners to wrap up the lap, and you can see here avoiding riding behind those sausage curves and staying tight to the apexes as he comes out of 17, full attack on the throttle once again and through Club Corner to complete the lap. A very nice lap by Mr. King as he crosses the line. Now, as for the rules tonight, of course, what are the fact that we only have the one race? We do have some special rules in place. But firstly, setup. Our drivers tonight will be running the iRacing high downforce setup for the race, where there's only the one race there. And in terms of qualifying, there is no qualifying session. So you're probably thinking, how do we determine the grid order? Well, the starting grid for the race is determined by reverse championship order. So what that means is if you're at the bottom of your respective championship, so if you're in the pro class and you're in last place, you'll be starting at the front of the field. And I should clarify that for the newcomers tonight, they will be starting right at the back of their respective classes. So that way for Bobby Thompson, for example, he will be starting at the back of the pro class. He'll be starting behind the leaders in the championship there. Now, it should also be pointed out that the grid will be split into driver classes this time. So as a result, we will not have our typical grid where it's intermixed between pros and AMs depending on how well they qualify. Instead, the pros will take the front slots. We'll have the pro class at the front of the grid and then the amateur class behind. And that is to try to open up the racing a little bit more, particularly over the course of the 2 hours, and it gives an opportunity for the classes to focus on one another rather than battling between classes. Of course, there may be instances where pro drivers come out the pits behind amateurs, or amateurs find their way past pros who have made a mistake, or it's just the case the pros are a bit slower than the AMs. It's all to watch out for, but it will shake things up a little bit and perhaps change the overall feel of the start of the race in particular. Now, as for the race is worth double points, and that is why this is so critical. As mentioned by Katie Eames in the chat, this race is worth a huge amount to every single driver, because normally it's 50 points for a win. Tonight it's 100 points for a win, and you can imagine those 100 points will take you a long way in the championship if you pick up the win tonight. That's the equivalent of getting 2 wins back to back over a single race round when we have the sprint and the feature race, and that's why this race is so critical in everyone's calendars, particularly for those who are trying to mount a title challenge. The amateur class right now, a lot of drivers are salivating at the prospect of double points tonight. They know it's a great opportunity. The duration of the race, of course, 2 hours or 120 minutes, and drivers' starting fuel loads will be restricted to 75% for the start of the race, as per our previous feature races in the earlier rounds. But on top of that, there are 2 mandatory pit stops tonight, which will require drivers to take on fuel over the course of the race, and they must also change all 4 tyres at some point in the race. So it could be the case that the driver decides, right, for the first pit stop they'll change just the front tyres, and then in the second pit stop they change the rear tyres, or in fact in the second stop they change all 4 altogether. They choose what to do, but they must change all 4 tyres on the car over the course of the race distance. And on top of that, because we're feeling a little bit generous and because of the duration of the race, we are giving drivers 2 fast repairs rather than the standard 1, because of the fact that this race is effectively double the time distance of the typical feature race. So those are the change rules there, and we're checking with you guys and girls in the chat once again. And we can see there that Stefan Rasmussen talking about Patak and Mattel both ready to give it everything today, and that is great to hear. And we can see Ignium, well, I'm not sure how I pronounce your name, sir. I'm going to give it a shot. Stigen van Nilgen, probably completely butchered that, but wishing the best of luck to the Ignium drivers. And Kashmir fan saying that he may join later this season or the next one if he has the time. Well, that's great to hear. We'd love to have you on board, sir. But it's good to hear all you guys and girls getting ready to watch the race in action, of course, as we head now back to our live pictures here, and let's see how our drivers are getting on in this practice session, as we've still got the best part of 12.5 minutes to go. It does look as though right now Matt Caruana has set the fastest time in this practice session, and we were hearing in the final practice sessions building up to this, so the practice session last night, that drivers were typically looking for times in the 2:01s, or alternatively the fastest drivers in the 2-minute flats, and we heard the fastest time set by anyone was Caruana. I think it was Caruana or somebody else with a 2-minute flat 0.6, but right now we can see Harry Melvin meanwhile making his way out of the pits once again and heading around on the circuit as he heads down and letting the BMW there of Colin Martin come charging through as they make their way around in through to turn number 3 and through 4 and 5 very shortly. Now, I appreciate for some of you that corners have names here at the British Circuit Silverstone, and as a result, I'm going to clarify now, we will be using corner numbers rather than names, just so that way we make it a bit easier for everyone to understand what the corner numbers are, and you can reference corners quite easily. We may throw in an occasional name every so often, but we're going to stick to numbers tonight, just that way you're aware. Well, you see Melvin here making his way up to turn 6 right now, and as he comes through the left into right combination, going into 7, indeed looking very strong as we see the 2 Ignium Motorsport Lamborghinis there of Melvin, and also I believe that is Hicks just ahead of him. And no, that is not Hicks just ahead of him. In fact, Hicks is a little bit further back around the circuit, but we've got a good number of Lamborghinis driven by the Ignium Motorsport drivers here, and it is great to see. Now, I did have ample opportunity to have a good number of chats with our drivers as they were building up to tonight. And starting off with, of course, one of our senior members of what is the Next Gen Racing community, Mark Sykes here, currently sat in the pit lane. And what he was saying to me getting into the car is that he just wants to bring the car home tonight. He's had very little practice due to limited time available, but it's a track he quite likes, Silverstone. And after the good performance at what was Le Mans, you can imagine he's going to do everything he can in order to go even better tonight. But we look a little bit further around, and the one driver, of course, who is on fire after his performance last time out there, we see Batak parked up. Batak was saying to me, the BMW M4 driver from Switchback Motorsport, he was saying to me as we were walking down the pit lane towards his garage, was the fact that his thoughts about this upcoming race is that it's going to be a very hard race, and he finds the track very tricky in a GT3 car. So he thinks it's all going to be about surviving tonight. So perhaps not as confident as he might like to be here, but we do know with Batak, he is the master of survival, and he is normally the driver who, if he's a little bit slower than everyone else, seems to find a way to get a good result by being very consistent. We haven't seen too many mistakes from Batak since the opening rounds of the season, and indeed we all imagine what he's able to do tonight. As we see here, looking over to one of our pro drivers, coming away from our amateurs up to our pros right now. We've got Øystein Herford here, the Norwegian driver, making his way through what is turn number 9 there and getting it a bit wrong, going a bit wide. Then, of course, there will be track limits penalties accrued by our drivers and instant limits accrued. Our drivers will have to be cautious of those because otherwise they will be given a slowdown penalties which they'll have to take. But the Norwegian going into tonight was feeling relatively confident from what I hear and looking for a strong performance as he makes his way down towards, well, he's making his way down the hangar straight right now and heading up into turn number 15 there. And I believe that was Navarro de Bova there just moving out the way. As we see the privateer of Hereford making his way through 15 right now, looking very composed in that BMW and feeling strong, I reckon, for tonight. He has been a strong performer ever since he arrived on the scene in this series, and the number 73 driver will be looking to give it full send once again tonight. Now, meanwhile, looking from one pro driver to another, Jean-Louis Deschamps here, the Challenge driver, making his way across the timing line and going on to another lap here. In fact, that is wrong there, ladies and gentlemen. We are just going to change the name of the driver's team there. That is not quite the right name. I believe that is a glitch that we've just accumulated on our screen here as he makes his way through. Give us 2 seconds for that. But we had a good chat to him, and what he was saying effectively was that he is looking forward to tonight, with the fact that this race is going to be one of those races where he feels as though he can do very well. But I'll give you his specific thoughts very shortly. We're just making that very quick correction right now. So at the end of the day, I appreciate a lot of our drivers are very proud of the teams they race for. As we look like to Deschamps, racing for Delta Motorsport here, coming around right now to complete another lap. And the number 55 driver was telling me that it's a nice track where you have a certain flow. And once you make a mistake, you lose valuable time, especially in Maggots and Beckett. So he's referring to turns 11 through to 13 effectively. And he's also curious about everyone's pace and pit stop strategy as it's the first 2-hour race of the season. So he's looking at this one with anticipation here, which is great to hear as he makes his way down through the corners, which he enjoys. Maggots and Beckett's here, as you can see, he's going through the sweeping left into right combination here and then going through what is the right hander there, going into Copse turn 14 and parking the car off circuit is Jean-Louis as he gets ready to go back to the pits. But we're just checking in with race control at the moment, and we are not hearing anything from race control as things currently stand. We will let you know if anything does arise in the meantime with regards to stewarding or concerns, but nothing at this point in time are we hearing anything major. So instead we continue to look back at the drivers as they're making their way around the circuit. And of course tonight we do have the return of the challenge driver of Navarro de Bova, and it is good to see the son of the Bova family making his way out on the circuit right now, racing in the amateur class. Of course not able to make them on last time out, but indeed representing the family. His father's also out on the circuit, that's Jeremy de Bova in the pro category, but we can see the youngster back here on the circuit tonight and hoping to do well in the number 104 car. Navarro has had a strong season so far on his debut, a lot to learn from what we're hearing, but he's learning race in, race out, and it's good to see him out here once again. As we take a look back at the chat with you guys and girls, and we can see there that we do also have Elwin Elbit Sykes tuning in. Good to see you here. And as we wait for our drivers to get underway, one other driver I did have a chance to briefly catch up with was Kurt Van Hoornacker. Now, Van Hoornacker, who you can see here running alongside Navarro Dabova, the two challenge drivers together. Indeed, I think they're going for a little bit of a photo opportunity here. And Van Hoornacker on his opening out lap here, as they're just getting a bit of practice, I think, of getting used to defending and being around other drivers, particularly through the difficult combination of turns 16 and 17. What Van Hoornacker was saying to me going into tonight is the fact that with regards to this race in particular, he just wants to drive his pace and take some points, hopefully. Staying out of trouble will be the main thing. And indeed, we have seen that from some of the drivers in the amateur class. They found themselves getting into trouble, and not necessarily their fault. I should point out before I come across as though I'm trying to say it's their fault. Not necessarily their fault, but they found where they've been entwined with pro drivers. Alternatively, it's just been multiple cars trying to go into a single corner, particularly when we've had 3 wide or 4 wide situations, or 4 cars all very close together. We have seen instance, and I can appreciate what he means by that. Staying out of trouble just does not want to be in any instance, because as soon as you're involved in an incident, of course, that can cost you time in your race, but on top of that as well, you may be reporting to the stewards afterwards. Indeed, you don't want that, because I can assure you the Next Gen Racing stewards are quite firm with their penalties, as we see Van Hoornacker right now making his way through turn 7 once again. Coming back to our pros, meanwhile, we do of course have Jamie Dory. He is going to be out on circuit, and I believe if we can try and find him, he's not currently listed on our time screen. There he is. There is Jamie Dory making his way, the Next Gen Racing driver with Barracuda Motorsport, in partnership with Barracuda Motorsport here, making his way down the hangar straight into turn 15 right now. And what Dory was saying to me, and you'll have seen him earlier this week in the Legends Series, of course, where he had a rather challenging time in the Legends Series. He was saying to me that he's looking for consistency. He feels that Bobby Thompson, his teammate from the Next Gen Racing with Barracuda Motorsport team, is the faster driver out of the 2 of them in the pro category. They're both in that pro category, of course, but they're looking to make an impact. And he, in particular, Idori, is looking for a top 5 position, if not higher, after his first round show at Donington. He thinks it could be possible in the Mercedes. He's having to learn the Mercedes, however, as it's very understeer happy into cops in particular. So we're thinking here of what is the challenging corner of turn number 9, if I remember my numbers and names correctly, and also the medium speed corner. So we're thinking here more Maggots and Beckett, so that's turn 11 through to 13 for you guys and girls. And hopefully he's going to have a clean race and have 2 of the Mercedes on the podium. So Dory is looking for the podium tonight, potentially, alongside Bobby Thompson. And going from one guy in the team to another, when I had the chance to speak to Bobby Thompson, who's currently parked in the pits there, and you can see him in the Mercedes in the middle of your camera, what Thompson was saying to me was the fact that he's looking forward to tonight on his debut, running under the Barracuda name himself, and also Aaron Thompson and Jamie Dory all together, albeit Aaron Thompson is in the amateur class, as we stated much earlier on in the show. Pace is looking good so far, but he hopes that the Mercedes can keep its tyres going for the 2-hour race. And that is one of the big questions for a lot of our drivers, is the tyre wear. They're concerned about how much tyre life is going to be pulled out of the car over the race distance, and whether that's going to be costing them significant pace. Now, going from another pro to a third pro in the sequence here, as we just try to find him. Here is the father of the Dabova family, making his way out of the final corner with 3 minutes to go in this practice session. The Jeremy Dabova there, the challenge machine, making his way up into turn number 1. And Jeremy was saying that after the last race in Le Mans, he was feeling very good. And I think it was because of his performances, and also the fact he got selected as driver of the day for his brilliant defence in the feature race. And what he's saying is hoping he can find the same race pacer at Silverstone, but needs to be patient and race for a good result. He's got that patience. It's going to be rewarded over the 2 hours, he feels, and if they have the same people around him as he did last time, it's going to be fantastic racing and a very hard fight. And the points are important to him, and this is the thing a lot of drivers have been saying or privately murmuring down at the paddock. The points are so critical here because of the fact it's double points, and he's looking for that good result. And he's going to try and be his best to be competitive tonight. Now, it's the case that for Jeremy, looking to be as competitive as possible, and one driver who is also looking to be competitive, and we see him here getting it a bit wrong out on circuit and actually going off, is Nigel Stock. Now, remember, Stock last time out switched to the Lamborghini from the Mercedes, which shocked a number of drivers. The number 888 driver making his way back onto the circuit right now, just rejoined. But after what was a strong performance last time out in Le Mans for Stock, he felt that last week went well for the change to the Lamborghini Huracan, and he's also looking forward to Silverstone as it's his home track, and he hopes to do well, but he's had his second vaccine yesterday, and as a result, his right arm right now feels like he's been punched. And I can tell you, ladies and gentlemen, that sometimes that second vaccine can, and then we're talking about the COVID-19 vaccine here, can take the wind out of your sails, and he's found that in particular for stock. So as a result, he's just going to be trying to do his best tonight and see if he can get in a good performance. As we see here, Aaron Thompson, the Mercedes driver, the third of the Next Gen Racing with Barracuda Motorsport drivers, making his way out of turn 5 and down the Wellington straight right now and heading up towards turn 6, running the number 141 car as he heads into turn number 6 right now. And we check in with you guys and girls in the chat once again there, and we can see Mataman Sandy's already making mistakes in the Facebook chat. It's going to be a bit of a challenging one, Matt, but indeed good luck to you and good luck to all the drivers, of course. We're not allowed to show favourites, but at the same time, it's always great to hear from our drivers here and there. Now, everybody just waiting to get racing right now, and we are expecting 1 or 2 more drivers to arrive very shortly, as we are just checking in with race control one more time here, and nothing from race control as it currently stands, ladies and gentlemen. So I think it will be the case we are due to go racing in the next 30 seconds. We will get the formation of the grid, and then we will be go, as everybody is getting ready right now. And indeed, one driver who we did have a brief chat to, he wasn't there last time out, but he is here today, is Edward Lack. And Lack, I believe he is in the pits right now, or he will be very shortly in the pits. Lack was saying to me for tonight, should be fun, time management will be key, lots of fast turns with a couple of overtaking places to make the most of, so we'll see what happens. But we are just waiting for the session to switch over to the race right now, as we see it does so, and we now begin to get the formation of the grid. As we wait, remember, 120 minutes, and here are the trackside conditions, ladies and gentlemen. As you can see there, we've got a track temperature of 35 degrees centigrade, and indeed track length of just shy of 6 kilometres. It's a long race distance, each lap very long. As we see the grid forming up here, and Vlaming will be the driver who takes that pole position due to the reverse grid order. He'll be taking the pole position in what is the Pro class. Meanwhile, it will be Tom Porter who takes the pole position in the amateur class here, what have him been last in the standings as it currently stands going into tonight in the amateur class. Now, speaking to Tom Porter, had a good chance to catch up with him as he was sat in the car waiting to go out. May start from the pits tonight, really needs a clean race, especially after throwing away 4th in class in the sprint race of Le Mans on the last lap. Plus, he started on 0 points again after switching from the Ferrari 488 to the Porsche. But the Porsche seems to have benefited him, and I think Porter is going to start today on circuit, not in the pits. So it will be very shortly for what is Didi Vlaming to take us away. As we hear, Mark Baker has jumped to the pits, so one driver has made the jump to the pits already. We are waiting to see if any other drivers do, as it will be Vlaming who takes us off. In fact, it's Colin Martin who takes us off. My apologies, ladies and gentlemen. It's Colin Martin. Our time screen has just been updated there. We'll wait and see, of course, but it does look as though Vlaming and Martin will be sharing that front row and will be taking us racing very shortly. As the safety car will peel into the pits very soon, and it will in fact be Vlaming there. That was a little bit of a bug on our time screen. We now wait to go with the lights, and we get the green flag. And it is green, green, green. We are lights out and away we go for the 2-hour endurance of round number 6 at Silverstone. And immediately all of our drivers going on the charge. And Lack in particular, Edward Lack already on the offensive into turn 1. He's up into P2, but there's already been a major incident. But Lack collecting the car there with a light tap, as we see a lot of our drivers getting involved in major incidents further down there, as we see all of our pros continuing together. I think we've got 5 wide into turn 3 right now, as we see that's Kenny Herriman's in the centre of your shot here, making his way into the left hand of turn number 4. And looking a little bit further back, we can see that Tom Porter held on to his position so far. They're in the lead of the amateur classes. Behind him, we have got what is Mark Sykes in P2 in the amateurs. He's P15 out on circuit right now, and there has been quite the eruption of fighting so far. As we see a bit further back here, all of our pros coming up into turn number 6, and we've got Jean-Louis Deschamps here who's holding off Colin Martin, and Paul King looking on the inside into 6, but the outside of 7 as Colin Martin goes defensive. He's already lost 4 places as Colin Martin, 3 places. Will he lose any more there? As we do see, that's Bobby Thompson who's now come through, and Paul King with King going wide. And as they charge it through what is turn number 8 here, they go charging through the right hander onto the old straight as they come down towards turn number 9 here into Copse Corner they go. And as they do, you can see that right now for Thompson, he's looking at very strong versus Colin Martin, and behind we have got there Harry Melvin tucked all the way in behind what was at the time Paul King, but King breaking away a little bit as Caruana here makes the move, and he's got himself up into P9 and is on a charge as Caruana right now really surging up through the field of the pro drivers here, as we will take a look back at some of the incidents that happened on the opening lap very shortly on the opening set of corners. But you can see Caruana on a charge still as they make their way down the hangar straight right now. Will we see any potential overtake slipstream moves here? Well, we can see here in P6 Bobby Thompson on a move on the inside versus Colin Martin. The BMW driver stays on the racing line, he doesn't go defensive here, and Bobby Thompson from Barracuda Motorsport is through and up into P5 as they now make their way down towards turns 16 and 17 once again. And a little bit further back we have got Harry Melvin there, who is looking a little bit latency spiked there as they make their way through turn number 17, and Melvin keeps disappearing and reappearing in existence. But after one lap then it is Deirdre Laming leading the field ahead of Oystein Hereford. Then it is Andrew Lovesey in P3, followed by Jean-Louis Deschamps in P4, Bobby Thompson in P5, Colin Martin in P6, Paul King in P7, Harry Melvin in P8, Matt Caruana behind him, very close behind him in P9, and then Kenny Herriman's in P10, who's under a lot of pressure as Caruana goes to the move here versus what is at the time it was the case he tried to go for the move on Melvin, but he couldn't find a way through there. He tried to send it into turn number 3, but in the end Melvin just held on. But behind we've got Kenny Herriman's here, who is under a bit of pressure from Jamie Dory just behind him in P11, and you've got Ben Hicks in P12, Jaco Boschhoff in P13. Those are our pros in the top 13 right now. We have got Jeremy DeBova in the pits in P31, and we've also got Edward Lack in P26 after the instance on the opening lap. But we can see it behind them then in the amateur class in P14 is Tom Porter leading them with Mark Sykes chasing after him. Then we've got Darren Doherty in P16, followed by Matthew Addy chasing after his fellow Ferrari driver here. Is the case the Briton behind the Irishman as they come through turn number 7, and as they do you can see it's the fact that Addy's trying to get the better run here versus Doherty as they come through the corners. Both drivers here very equal in terms of pace. We have seen this particularly at Long Beach. We saw this on the American soil with regards to these two drivers being very equal as they come into turn 9 right now, and staying there right now as I'm hearing Aaron Thompson has just got past Gareth Mills for what is P26, and behind them you can see Van Hoenacker there trying to creep into the action as they make their way through, and we see as they come charging through Maggots and in towards Beckett's. It's the case through turns 11 through to 13. All four drivers staying in sequence right now, and that's Tom Delaney at the back of this pack who is trying to find a way past. He's very close to the back of Van Hoenacker as we are hearing there are some changes of position up towards the front of the field. Lovesey in P3 still. Bobby Thompson has got past Jean-Louis Deschamps for P4. Let's take a look back at how it happened. So in the drag race here, you can see Thompson in the Mercedes on the inside versus the Porsche driver Jean-Louis Deschamps here. The Delta Motorsport driver not fighting this one, instead opting to stay on the racing line and stay to the outside there. Sensible move here. I think a lot of our drivers just settling down and waiting to go racing later on, as we see that Darren Doherty battling here with what is, I believe, that is Tom Delaney here, and Delaney find a way through it. And look at Ollie Wayne. Wayne is trying to come through on the inside here at turn number 18, and as they do, he's not able to right now, but Wayne's definitely on the charge. But look who is on the attack. It is Mr. Batak as he comes to the inside versus Wayne into turn number 1 here, and as the Switchback Motorsport driver holds that inside line, he now switches to the outside into 2, and we can see Wayne is trying to come back at him in the Mercedes here as they're heavy on the brakes here, and Alexander's got to be very careful of the fact that Wayne is very close behind. He's being hunted by George Bland, and you can see Wayne going for the inside there into the hairpin style corner, turn number 4, and Batak goes wide as a result, and George Bland has now gained the position. He's up into P21 is Bland. He's battling for what is right now P8 in the amateur class as they come charging down what is the Wellington straight here, and you can see he's got the momentum versus Wayne, and I think going into this corner he's going to have him, because Wayne's going to have no comeback time. In fact, you could see how Wayne tried to turn in and then realised just how far forward Bland was, and he actually had to back out of turning, otherwise he would have made contact. And then Edward Lack is now on a charge, the CXR Project Black driver here, coming up through the field, doing everything he can to come through, and as they make their way through the right-hander here of what is turn number 8 and head onto the old start finish straight, you could see that Lack versus Batak here, and there's really no warrant for the fact for what is Batak to battle with Lack. He needs to let Lack come through and cause him to pull him up to the next drivers ahead, as we're hearing that Tom Porter has had a bit of an off, and he is in P13 right now. Jaco Boschhoff as well is stuck behind him. Boschhoff really struggling here. In fact, Boschhoff I think has got a problem with the car, because he's just made a major mistake through 13 and he's dropped down to P15. Now looking a little bit further back, meanwhile, we can see right the way back down the field, we've got Arjen Bakker here pressing on all the same. And I do believe it's the case that Arjen Bakker right now heading up towards what is turn number 15 here and doing everything he can in order to be able to try and close up to the back of our drivers ahead. But no success so far for Arjen Bakker as he makes his way into the corners as it currently stands. And we can see there no movement forward as George Bland is on the offensive further up, but Arjen Bakker staying on the back of this pack and trying to find a way through there as they come all the way through the corners right now. And then as we look back to the front of the field, we can see Darren Doherty under a lot of pressure from Ollie Wayne. Here is Ollie Wayne and George Bland as they make the way up through. And it's Bland in the offensive position right now as they come from. We've got a lot of smoke there coming out of what is turn number 1. And I think Tom Porter has had a major instance somewhere on circuit. In fact, let's take a look what's happened here. Tom Porter has had an off. So Porter, who was only moments ago leading this part of the field as he was coming into turn number 1, the rear end's just completely gone, and that's the smoke we saw from the fact he just simply lost the car. But fortunately for him, he didn't go charging off into the gravel, and Porter losing a lot of ground, and that means we now have Mark Sykes leading at the moment. He's leading the amateur class in P14, but he has got Van Hohenacker and also Addy around him, and Addy trying to go all the way around the outside as they come through turn number 7 here. But Sykes holds true for the time being as they make their way out to 7 and through 8, and we ride on board the gearbox here of the Lamborghini driver as they charge all the way through and up towards what is turn at number 9 here. Now will Addy look for a move or will he wait for it? I think he's going to wait for it here because you can see Van Hohenacker is looking for a potential move. The Porsche driver there looking very, very tempting indeed, but he's not able to get it this time as they come charging up through the flying sequence of turns 10 through to 14 right now. And as they come through the left into right combination, it's another left into right here, but you can see the differences in lines here. Sykes taking a wider line by comparison with Addy through turn 13 in particular, turn 12 in particular, and that is giving him better turning, but it's also costing him momentum through 13. But he's had a really good run this time out of turn number 14 as they charge down towards what is 15 now. You can see that behind in the rear of your picture there, you've got George Bland in a freeway battle here with Ollie Wayne and also Edward Lack trying to get in the mix. Lack, of course, trying to come through the field after a disastrous opening lap here, but Wayne on the move versus Bland. They're side by side, and as they come out of turn 15, head down towards 16 here, you can see that Doherty just staying on his racing line, but it's the case that Bland going defensive, and we've got Lack coming through. He's trying to creep through versus Wayne, but Wayne is not going to give up the space right now. Mercedes versus BMW, and then we've got the BMW of Alexander Batak also trying to go on the offensive here as they all come across that timing line to go onto lap number 5 right now. And you can see how for Wayne, he does not want to let anybody through, whether they're pro or amateur here. He wants to hold on to the position and do everything he can in order to be able to take places. But we can see Lack going for the move here into turn number 3, and as he does so, I think Wayne's going to have to back out of this one, or will he? Goes to the return into turn 4 here, and these guys are costing one another time as they make their way out of the corner, because you can see that Bland is already breaking away and is going on the offensive versus Doherty. But we look further back once again and we see that Lack trying to find a way through right now as we ride on board the roll-bar here of what is Edward Lack's BMW M4, and as they come into the braking zone for what is turn number 7 here, you can see 6 here, no change at this point in time as they now come into 7 and they have to go through that road surface angle change. And as they come down through the drop and head into the acceleration zone, you can just see the speed of that Mercedes as they come out the corner, just building so much momentum versus the BMW. The BMW stronger in the corners, as I'm hearing that meanwhile it's a case that Wayne, it's Bland, he's looked at the potential move versus Doherty, and Doherty's gone wide, and we can see that Bland moving immediately out of the way in case Doherty came out, as we're hearing that Aaron Thompson has jumped to the pits. He's had a major accident, but with both Bland and also Doherty getting things wrong, you can see that Wayne is coming charging through here, and Wayne gains 2 for 1, the M&V Esports driver making it count and coming charging through the order as they come into what is turn number 14 here, and Wayne gaining a 2 for 1 special. But what has happened to Aaron Thompson? Oh, goodness me, now that is a disaster, and that's Arjen Bakker who's had an off as well. Now, I'm not sure what happened to Arjen Bakker. We're going to take a look back here and try and figure out what happened to the Porsche driver. So as he's making his way round here now, Arjan's had a mistake already coming out of the corner. That's coming onto the old pit straight there, and the car ran wide, and that's what happened to Arjan Bakker. Just too much power coming out the corner and too much track width used there. That's very unfortunate, and we can see a little bit up front right now. Van Hoornakker, well, he's in a battle here, of course, with Delaney, and he's just got past Delaney, has Van Hoornakker, as they come through in towards turn at number 2 and 3. But we can see that Van Hoornakker doing everything he can to hold on to this position right now, as Delaney's trying to go all the way around the outside into 4. And he's going to look to the inside here, but it's the case that Van Hoornakker can't shut the door and goes deep. And as a result, Delaney regains the position right now. Delaney showing his competitive spirit here as they come through. But they've got to be worried about the fact they've got Mark Sykes. And also, they've got the best part of Ollie Wayne chasing after me as they come through. And that's Jeremy De Bova in the mix as well. A lap down on the pair of them as they make their way through the corner. And it's Van Hoornakker who gets back ahead for the time being. But he goes deep out of turn 6 and into 7 they go here. The two of them keep changing places as they make their way through the right-hander. And I think Caruana has just had an off. We're hearing, in fact, he's backwards here. Now, what has happened to Matt Caruana? So making his way through turn number 9, that was battling with Øystein Hereford here, and the contact between the two of them, and Caruana's gone for a spin there. Oh, that was looking very nip and tuck, and we have been looking a bit further down the order, but now we're going to be looking a little bit more up towards the front, and we can see that right now it is Bobby Thompson leading after 12 minutes ahead of Øystein Hereford right now. Hereford after that instant with Caruana. I think there might be a question to the stewards about that one. We didn't see the full picture there, but it looks as though they were side by side through turn number 9, and neither driver wanted to back down, but behind you can see Didi Vlamink here having to oh goodness me, and Vlamink has just hit, I believe that is Lovesey, who's just taken a major hit on the rear there. I think Vlamink just locked up under braking. We'll take a look back at that. So as they're making their way down into the corner here, we ride on board the roll bar, and I think it's going to be a lock-up of the brakes here into turn number 17, and it is turn 16, and it is just simply too late on the brakes, and he takes out what was at the time our driver just ahead of him there. Of course, not intentional, but that is a bit of a disaster, and Vlamink now with a damaged car, as it will be the case for Lovesey as well, as Lovesey here makes his way in the Ignium Motorsport machine through what is turn number 3 once again. And so our driver's just getting a little bit too hot-headed early on, as we see Harry Melvin here in P3, the Ignium Motorsport driver, charging after Hereford as they come down towards turn number 6. He goes to his side here, and as they make their way through the corner, remember it switches back to a right-hander immediately on exit here, and it's the case that Melvin getting a little bit of snap oversteer, but he goes to the cutback. Very, very wise to try and creep in with a cutback here, and Hereford has to respond by giving him the space, and as they come out of 7 and through 8, it's going to be a drag race up towards turn 9 here, and I think Melvin's got this done. Melvin with a very strong cutback move there, and we can see Hereford flashing his lights. Now, I'm not sure whether this is to try and put Melvin off or trying to get a message through to him to say, okay, fair enough, well done. But you can see constantly flashing his lights here as they make their way down towards 11 through to 14 once again. But we are seeing a little bit further around the circuit right now. Colin Martin in P5 as it currently stands, chasing after Jean-Louis Deschamps here. Deschamps are very fortunate to avoid the incident with what was at the time Lovesey and Vlamink. He was just outside of the picture when we looked to that back, but it's the case that Colin Martin losing a bit of ground to Deschamps right now, but look who's gaining a lot of ground here. It is Paul King as they come charging down towards turn number 15 once again here after what is only 6 laps of racing, and right now King is on a chance to try and get himself up into that top 5 as they come through the right-hander. And meanwhile down in P13 we can see Caruana here versus Boschov, the two Lamborghini drivers side by side up into 15, and Caruana getting the job done nice and early. The Luxim 24 driver versus the Ignium Motorsport driver here as they come through. But a little bit further up we can see Jamie Dory in P10 right now, the Mercedes driver tucked in behind Heremans, and he's got Lovesey all over the back of him. Lovesey, of course, with the damage to the rear of that Porsche, will be experiencing some trouble getting that rear end rotated, particularly with some damage to the aerodynamics, as we are hearing that Navarro de Bova has just had an incident. What has happened to Navarro as that's coming out of turn 15, and you can see that's Gareth Mills there, I believe that's Millsy, just making his way down towards what is the turn number 16 here, and Millsy as he's known to his friends, but we'll refer to him as Mills, of course, the 204 driver right now down in P27, just missing Navarro de Bova's car there. Of course, Navarro doing a good job of keeping that car stationary right in the middle of the road, but the South African driver here of Mills pressing on in P27 right now, 1.7 seconds down on Tom Porter, who was our leader in the amateur class until he had that major error into turn 1 3 laps ago. But as we look a little bit further up the field right now, we can see that it is the case that Sykes holding on to P3. He has been passed by Delaney and Addy, and particularly Matthew Addy right now, who you're looking at in the centre of your picture as he goes through turn number 6 on a mission to hold on to that lead. As we see that Paul King battling with Colin Martin here into turn number 9. You can see King with that very tricky inside line there into turn 9, where he's got to take all the speed out of the car, and that's what Colin Martin was hoping for. He would hope that King had to take all the speed out of the Lamborghini, so as they go through the sweeping section here of 11 through to 14, he'll be able to get very close to the back of that Lamborghini. But remember, for Colin Martin, he doesn't have the straight line speed of the Lamborghini in that BMW. He has to use the toe of that Lamborghini to give himself some grunt down the straight, and it's the case of finding a way through on the corners. And look now, as they make their way down to 15, you can see he's no longer really gaining. He's gaining a tiny amount in the long run up to 15, but it's not close enough, and he has to wait to go again as they make their way through the right-hander of 15 and head down towards 16 and 17. Behind them, of course, you've got there Vlaming, who's just holding on right now after, of course, that incident earlier on 2 laps ago. But meanwhile, as he comes across that timing line to start another lap, Bobby Thompson now 4.2 seconds clear of Harry Melvin at the front of the field. This is the leader in the Pro class and the leader of the overall race, it should be pointed out. And as he makes his way through turn number 3, feeling very comfortable, is our race leader by looks of things. But meanwhile, down in P9, we can see Herriman's here battling with what is Hicks. He's trying to find a way through into turn 1, and I think the privateer here of Herriman's doing everything he can to put pressure on the Lamborghini driver in front of him. And we know that Herriman's and Hicks have a history of battling one another throughout this series. We saw some fantastic battling between them at Le Mans, and we've seen it time and time again, both of them doing everything they can in order to get close. And you could see under braking in particular, Herriman's very strong in the brakes by comparison with Hicks, and I really do think it's the case that the Porsche driver here is looking to get the move done as soon as possible. As we just check in with race control, no major information from race control currently, folks, so it carries on all the same as Herriman's pulls out of the draft there and just simply looks at that inside line into 6. He can't make the move, he's too far back, but he's trying to throw these little dummy moves or these little feint moves which may make Hicks just make a small mistake under braking or turning and cost him time. Meanwhile, a bit further down the order, speaking of one pro who's out of place right now, Ed Lack trying to get his way through the order. He's just made the pass on Sykes then. I think Sykes has actually made a lock-up into turn number 6. In fact, Sykes has got a problem with the car because he's gone very wide. It's just been a major lock-up. He's losing places like a stone being hit by a hammer right now. In the fact as he comes through turn number 7 here is the case. He is being knocked down the order. He's dropped all the way down to P20 from what was at the time P16. And Sykes continuing to struggle here. I think there is a problem with that Lamborghini because he's losing speed coming out of what is turn number 8 and up into 9. But meanwhile, just ahead of them, we can see that Lack now trying to find the move on Van Hohenacker, and Lack really struggling to find his way past the amateurs who are giving him the best they've got as they make their way through 11 through to 14. And we can see that behind it's Wayne versus Bland once again, and Wayne has been passed by Lack after that brilliant double move, but now he's got Bland all over the back of him as they come charging down through 14 and head up towards what is turn 15 very shortly. Now surely here in the battle between the Porsche and the BMW, it will be the case that the Porsche will hold on for the time being. It's just got a little bit more speed there. The BMW is all about the handling. But meanwhile, further down the order, I can tell you that Stock versus Mark Baker here. That's Stock on your left, that's Baker behind in the red Ferrari. And as they make their way into 15, Stock getting the move done nice and early and before the braking zone there. Up into P24 is Stock here, making the Lambo Pearl work well as Baker goes wide there, and we can see that as a result, as they come running around here, we do have, I believe, that is a car that is a lap down there. Now, I think that's Aaron Thompson's Mercedes making its way through the field right now, the amateur driver, who is effectively a lap down on his peers minus Arjan Bakker. Here's Arjan Bakker in P30 as he makes his way through turn number 3, and it is not working out for Bakker right now. But looking back up towards our leaders as it currently stands, things are starting to settle down a little bit, although I say that, and then Caruana looking for a move here versus Lovesey into turn number 6 as they make their way through the corners here, and we jump to the exterior blimp and watch them make their way through 7. Now for Caruana, having had that instant earlier on, what we have seen is that he's tried to surge his way back through the field as rapidly as possible here. But I do wonder if there's going to become a point, given the fact we're approximately 20 minutes into the race right now, whether there is going to be a point where Caruana decides, you know what, it's time to go for the strategy element. Because remember, our drivers do have to make 2 pit stops in this race. Does he go early once he knows he's got the space to come out and clear air, or does he go later than most and try to gain places by simply outlasting everybody on track? Now really with Caruana, you've got nothing to gamble. We know he's a very fast driver. We know he's perhaps the fastest driver here on one lap pace, or one of the fastest, so he can afford to gamble. Which gamble will he go? If I was him personally, I'd probably go for the gamble of trying to pit early and find some space out on circuit, but there is that huge pack of amateurs, of course, further down the road as he makes his way up towards turn number 15 here. He can't find a way through right now as we jump back to the closer cameras here, but you can see he is putting pressure on Lovesey as they come through 15, and as they come out of the corner here and head down towards 16. Lovesey having to go very defensive here into 16. Caruana all over the back of him, and as they make their way into the braking zone here, no change currently, but we can see that Lovesey really feeling a lot of pressure as they come out of the final set of corners and go on to what is lap number 11 for these guys as they come around right now. 21 minutes has passed, and as they come through here, we're hearing that Mikel Andreasen has dropped down to P29, but as it currently stands, Lovesey under a lot of pressure here in the battle for P11 as they make their way through into turn number 3 once again. And we can see Lovesey continuing those defensive lines as they make their way through the corners here, and as they do so, Caruana just cannot find a way through right now, but they do have Ben Hicks literally just ahead of them there, and also Jamie Dory. And Dory here, I think, starting to act as a little bit of a rolling roadblock as they make their way out of what is turn number 5 and head up towards 6 here onto the Wellington straight. And you can see Caruana going for the move here, and in fact we've got a double move. We've got Hicks trying to go for the move into what is turn number 6, and Caruana coming through as well, and all the drives making through. Caruana getting the move done. Hicks could not get the move done, but Caruana going nice and late on the brakes there and getting himself up into P11, and he's immediately now on the charge versus Hicks as they all come out of turn number 7. A lovely camera shot there as they drive over the curb and head through to 8, and as they come all the way through, you can see Caruana definitely not waiting. He is a man on a mission, and he's trying to get himself up through that order as quickly as possible as the gaps are starting to open up, and these 4 are the closest 4 drivers on circuit as things currently stand. Now, where will Caruana go this time as they make their way through Maggots and Beckett's? That's turns 11 through to 13 for those of a numerical disposition. As we see here, it's the case that Caruana not able to find a way through immediately, but of course it's single file typically through here, but now it's all about the run out of 14 in the long run down the hanger straight here towards turn number 15. You can see Caruana very close to the back of Hicks as they come in. Hicks going defensive, and you can see Caruana having to feint from one side to another here. It makes you think back to times such as PK versus Mansell, albeit that was towards the end of the race. This is only when the race is young, and as they make their way through turn number 15, Caruana swings it round the outside there and is up into P10. My goodness, now will Hicks find a way back? No, he does not find a way back, but that was some brave stuff and brilliant side-by-side between the pair of them, and indeed, if that's what we're expecting to see later on from the pair as well, it's only going to get better, I can assure you. As we check in with you guys and girls in the chat right now, it's a case that we have got Ed Knight in the YouTube chat talking about one of the incidents earlier, saying that was nasty, and we also got Ginger India Mac saying great race, good changes of position. I'm glad to hear you're enjoying it, Mac, as they make the way then down towards turn number 3, and as they come all the way down here, it is the case, no changes at the moment, although we can see Caruana really starting to build up that momentum. But speaking of one driver who we haven't seen too much of right now, but he is on a charge, it is Matt Evans, who's in P22, and in the BMW there, he's on the offensive versus Darren Doherty right now. And Matt Evans, the MMV esports driver, of course, here, having had some difficult races so far, looking for a potential move. But meanwhile, I've got to just jump away for this very quickly, folks, as Caruana is going for another move here versus what is Dory, as they come through turns 6 and 7 here. Caruana does have the inside line, and as they come out of the sweeping right hand here and build up the speed, Caruana has gained another place as they come through, or has he, as it's the drag race for 8, and we can see he's very tight to the inside here, and then you've got Dory on the outside. Now surely one of them's got to give way here as they make their way into turn 9, and Caruana on that inside line here holding on right now, but will Dory find a way back? That is the big question as they come up into 11 through to 14, and I think the move has been made as they come charging through the corners, and indeed it is no change as it currently stands as they sweep through. Now going back to Matt Evans, only moments ago, of course, he was chasing after Darren Doherty, and he has got the move done versus Darren Doherty for what is P21, and we'll take a look back at how that played out. So coming out of turn 2 before we cut away from them into turn 3, went on the inside versus Darren Doherty, and I think Doherty did not put up too much of a battle there, being wary of the fact that the race is still early days, and you can see the Altitude esports driver there, more conscious, I think, of Nigel Stock trying to find a way past him very soon. But as they make their way through the quarters right now, you can see that Emmons continuing his charge, and he's currently in what is P7 in the amateur class. That's P21 overall. As we see, meanwhile, Edward Lack continuing this momentum here, but it's the case that Delaney has just found a way past, and Lack just cannot seem to get his way through as Delaney is into the pits. Now that is important, of course. That will release Lack for a time, and also Delaney is one of the first drivers to go for a pit stop, whereby the pit stop is, I think, a scheduled one rather than one in response to an incident. So Delaney, the first driver to flinch in this race, we believe, of our drivers on that lead lap at least, as we see Lack now starting to break a little bit away from Ollie Wayne as they come through turn number 9. Now, meanwhile, Lovesey by comparison, Andrew Lovesey here in P11. He is chased after Ben Hicks. Both of them are Ignium Motorsport drivers here, and of course will be working together. But Lovesey looking for the move here, and I do think Hicks is not going to put up a fight on this one as they make their way through 60. You can see Lovesey there being given the clearance to come through as they make their way through turn number 7 here. And I think it's the case that they both recognise that Lovesey is the slightly faster driver at this point in the race, even with that mangled rear end on the Porsche 911 continuing around the circuit as they make their way around onto the old start-finish line straight there and then head up into turn number 9. Now, meanwhile, a little bit further out, I believe Matt Emmons has just been passed by Stock here. In fact, Stock has made his way through. He's got 2 places there, and he's up into what is now P19 as they come through here. And Stock on a bit of a charge here as they make their way through the corners. And in fact, Mark Sykes, I think, has had an off somewhere, or something's gone very wrong for Mark Sykes. Now, where is that? That looks to be... But, well, I'm not 100% sure where Mark Sykes has had the off there. We're just waiting for the camera to pan around. That's coming out of 5 and heading down onto the Wellington Straight. What's happened to Mark Sykes? So he's had a spin into turn number 2 by looks, and then as cars have come through, oh my goodness, and that was Mark Baker who clipped the back of him there, and Baker just not able at the time to, I think, see Sykes as he was coming through the corner. That was unsighted, but very unfortunate, and that has proven to be a bit of a dampener in the race for the pair of them right now, particularly for Baker, who will need to get that car repaired as quickly as possible, and I suspect Sykes will need to do the same as we look back to our live pictures right now, and we take a look around the field, and we look to P13 right now, Jaco Boshoff chasing after what is there. That's Jamie Dory just ahead and chasing after the Mercedes driver, and we ride on board here with the Lamborghini driver as they make their way through turn number 1 and into Farm Corner. Of course, that's turn number 2. Now, of course, for Boshoff here, having a bit of a difficult time at the moment in the series after a couple of troublesome rounds, particularly the races last time out of Le Mans did not go in his favour, as we hear that Matt Caruana has come into the pit. So I think it's the case for Caruana that he is really going for that early pit stop. Only 27.5 minutes in, so that's quite early for 2 pit stops in this race. On 120 minutes, you'd pit, if you were to break it evenly, you'd pit at the 40-minute marks, so at 40 minutes and 80 minutes. So to pit this early on, I think Caruana is trying to give himself some clear air out on circuit and then go charging and gain time. But staying with the battle right now, we can see here Dory doing a good job in the Mercedes, so he's gone a bit deep through 7. You can see the understeer there, which he was talking about in our pre-race chat with him. He was talking about the understeer catching him out potentially, and right now as they continue through turn number 8 here, we can see it's the difference between the front engine rear-wheel drive car ahead, meanwhile the mid-engine rear-wheel drive car behind, where the engine being towards the rear in Boshoff's car is giving him the rotation through these sweeper corners and also through those slower speed corners. But then when we get onto the straight, it's the case that Mercedes really opens up the grunt, and once it can point in the right direction, it can go very quickly. But as they come through turns 11 through to 13 here, you can see again how the Mercedes driver is really struggling with the understeer by comparison. We've got a driver off there, and that I believe is the Porsche driver of what is Lovesey, who rejoins there as the drivers take it cautiously, and Lovesey has had a major off, and we're not sure what's happened to Lovesey. I think he's just got a bit wide, but he drops behind these guys right now, and the battling continues. And we take a very quick sip of water. Now, it should be pointed out, whilst we were taking a quick drink there, that we have got a number of drivers who've now started to take pit stops, as I believe there is Tom Porter. He's recently just come out of the pit. So a lot of drivers now starting to entertain those potential pit stops as they make their way around. And Tom Porter here, well, he's down in what is at the moment P9 in the amateur standings, as we do see there. That is Batak versus Doherty here, and I think Batak has just made a move in his position. No, he's holding on right now. Instead, that's No, my apologies. That is a car that is a lap down there, and we're just trying to ascertain who that is. I believe that is, but no, it's not Delaney there, but that is a Mercedes. That's Aaron Thompson, who is behind Batak there. My apologies, folks. Just trying to get our way through all the different cars out on circuit, but it's Aaron Thompson who's trying to find his way through right now. He's a lap down, of course, here on Batak, and this is going to cost Batak some time. And as we go from one Dane to another, we can see Mikko Andreasen here from Slow and Steady Racing in a bit of a lonely P27 as it currently stands. And I believe Andreasen was involved in a bit of an incident at the start of the race, so as a result he's having to recover his way into this race right now, and the Ferrari driver in that P27 position overall, P13 in the amateur class, and slowly building up. As we see, meanwhile here, we've got Matt Caruana coming out of, I believe that's Mark Sykes in fact, but Matt Caruana right now, he's already out of the pits and he's on the charge. He's all the way down in P25, but look at what he's given himself through that pit stop. He's got a nice amount of clear track. He's got a couple of cars ahead of him, and I think the nearest car, that's Mark Baker, who's a lap down, who will be required to get out of the way due to blue flags. But if you look at that track map in the top right corner of your screen, ladies and gentlemen, you can see that it's the case for Caruana. He has got a huge amount of space out on circuit right now, and this is exactly what he wanted. He's the number 24 car in terms of place on the map, and he's just coming up to turn 6. He's got nobody to charge past in the near future. The next car up the road to him is 20 seconds away, and that is exactly what he wanted, because now he can put in effectively qualifying lap after qualifying lap here without any hindrance, and that's how he wanted to play it. But meanwhile, looking back up front, we can see Jakob Boshoff here in P10, and I believe we are seeing another change of position here. We've got Wayne versus Bland here, and as they've come through turn number 15, we will take a look back at what's happened this very shortly. But Bland and Wayne, both of them battling for the championship lead, and in the amateur class right now, continue to contest positions. So let's take a look back at what happened. So this was in the run-up towards turn 15 there, and you can see that Wayne went through on the inside versus Bland, and Bland taking a wide line. I think he actually went a bit deep on the brakes. As you look back to live pictures right now, the leader in the amateur class is the red and white Ferrari, of course, the privateer of Matthew Addy, the number 570 car, and he is leading this class right now, doing everything he can. In fact, he was the one who passed Bland only moments to go down the straight there, so I think Bland has actually made a bit of a mistake as they make their way then through turns number 3, 4 and 5, but Addy right now doing everything he can in order to hold on to that P13 and that lead in the amateur class, and showing a very strong performance is the Briton here today, and he has really been coming alive, particularly last time out at Le Mans, as we see a car there going a bit wide out of what was turn number 5. But it's the case as we focus on the here and now, we can see that Addy doing everything he needs to in order to be able to hold on to this position. But a bit further back in this pack, we can see it's Nigel Stott versus Matt Emmons again, and Emmons under that increasing pressure as we ride on board the gearbox of Matt Emmons as they come through turn number 7 here, and as they sweep through, you can see the difference again in those drivetrains, where the Lambo with its mid-engine rear drive has the better rotation through the corner versus what is the BMW here of Matt Emmons as they come out of turn number 8 and head up into turn number 9. And as they continue to do so, he's looking for a potential move, but he's not able to find it. Is Stock as they come through 9 and head up into 10, 11, 12 and 13 very shortly. And as they do so here, it's the case that Emmons having to hold on for the time being as he just creeps away a little bit right now as we look back to the exterior cameras here. As they come at charging through 13 and head into 14, and we check in with you guys and girls, and Colin Martin, computer just froze, had to turn it off at the plug. So we have had, well, in fact, ladies and gentlemen, we have just had, we can confirm we have had 2 retirements. So that is Colin Martin and also Mark Baker have both retired from this race. And so we've had our first 2 retirements. And my apologies there, folks, a slight glitch on our timing screen there as we just get our cameras reset there. So with 2 drivers out, we've still got 30 of our 32 field racing around the circuit, and we are at the quarter way mark with the fact we have covered 33 minutes so far. We've still got just under an hour and a half to go, but that's very unfortunate to hear, Colin Martin, and as a result, we do look forward to seeing you back out on circuit in the near future. But I can appreciate that must be very frustrating for yourself. It was a good run so far. But meanwhile, looking a little bit further up the field from where we are, Kenny Herriman's here, battling with Diva Laming as they make their way out of what is turn number 8 and head up into 9 here. And it's the case that Herriman's making that charge once again here. We do know that he loves to go on a mission. And as they make their way through 9 and head up in towards 10, 11, 12 and 13, we're going to take a look back at what was the pass for P6. So they were coming through what was turn number 7 here, and in fact it was Vlaemic who went wide out the corner, and that just gave what was the opportunity for Heremans just to simply snake on the inside and say, well, I'll take that one, thank you very much. But we are hearing that Gareth Mills has just come into the pits from P25 at the time. In fact, it was P24. And as they make their way around on circuit right now and continue to press on here, the field started to reveal its strategies, and it is a big question. Of course, all our drivers are meant to be taking those tyre changes as well at some point in the race and taking on that additional fuel. But meanwhile, Wayne versus Addy, we have had a change for the lead in the amateur class here, and we didn't catch that on camera, but we are going to give you a wind back of it. So coming out of turn 9 here was Wayne versus Addy, and into a very odd place to go for an overtake here, but Addy just backing out of it into turns 10 and 11 there. 9-2 does not go into 1 at the very tight corners. I think a smart move there, but he can always come back later on. But Addy very close to the back of what is Wayne as they come out of 15 and head down towards 16 right now. And I can tell you that that's Addy going into the pits, as is Jaco Boshoff as well. A little bit earlier on he's going into the pits, but Addy, the first of our leaders in the amateur class here to go for a pit stop. And this could be critical in terms of the strategies here. It may reveal the hands. And of course, for George Bland right now, who's effectively third in the top 3 in the amateur class, before you account for the strategies setting them down the order, Bland right now really is the one who will be trying to push as much as possible, because he would love to get the win here. If he does, that would help him extend his championship lead phenomenally in the amateur class. But if Wayne is able to get it, it will enable Wayne to close up massively to him as they make their way through turns 3, 4 and 5 once again. And that will be the big question. And I would say really for Bland right now, what he needs to do is be very wary of the fact that if he does not react to Addy, then he's at risk of Addy jumping him through this opening pit stop. I would say in Bland's case, do the opposite of the drivers around you. So try and hold on for longer than Wayne and essentially go long. You'll lose time to them initially, but if he can go around the 45 to 50 minute mark, then that's going to give him a longer opening stint but shorter middle and end stints, and that could give him an advantage right at the end of the race. But we will wait and see as we see Jamie Dory here meanwhile in P10 as it currently stands, the Barracuda Motorsport with Next Gen Racing driver making his way through turns 12 and 13 as we currently see him, and as he comes through here chasing after Lovesey right now, as there's a lot of changes happening in the pits in terms of positions, and the field has spread out quite a bit right now as they make their way down the hangar straight. Dory and also Lovesey here. Lovesey at the front of the camera. Meanwhile, of course, we have got what is Dory at the rear of the camera, but centre of camera as they come through turn number 15 here. And really, at this point in the race as well, this is where it starts to open up in the 2-hour race. We start to expect the field to open up a little bit. For the uninitiated, in these longer races, it's quite tight at the start. And we saw a lot of action in the opening 25 minutes in particular. But now things will start to calm down a little bit as everybody starts to move into their second phase of thinking. You can imagine there's a lot of drivers here who for the first 20 minutes only think about gaining positions through battling on circuit, and they forget about their strategy. And then after those 20 minutes, they start to think more and more about the strategy, as we see Dory there almost getting it wrong, coming out of 9, and as he comes through, sorry, out of turn at 1 there we should say, as he comes through 2 and 3, it's the case he's had to collect the car. But Dory there almost with a run wide out of turn 1, and that could have been a disaster. Really pushing hard is Dory. But meanwhile, Evans chasing after Stock right now. Stock haven't got past him, a couple of laps to go. As we see that, I believe that's Jeremy Debova just moving out the way. A lap down on these guys. He's at the rear of the camera shot there. Debova pressing on as they make their way through. But we have just had an incident involving Arjen Bakker. What's happened to Arjen Bakker? To making his way then out of the final corner. This is into turn 1, only moments ago, and the rear end has just snapped and it has stopped there. Now he's jumped to the pits, I believe. I think he's completely taken the tyres to pieces. He's flat spotted the tyres, and that's why he's made the jump to the pit as they make their way through turn number 5 and up into 6. Looking back at Emmons versus Stock. Stock defending to the inside here. The rivalry continues between these two, but I think Stock's got more than enough straight line speed versus the BMW here. Emmons is going to have to go very late on the brakes. I'm hearing Van Hohenacker's just had an incident, and in fact that's Van Hohenacker who's just off the circuit there. He's just rejoined coming out of what was turn number 6 into 7 there, and he was doing very well, and he's lost 2 places. He's now dropped down to 16th where he was previously in 14th. What happened to Van Hohenacker? So making his way up into turn number 6 then, does he just get it late on the brakes here into the corner? That's a lot of speed, but the rear end comes round this. I think he carried too much speed into the corner, and the rear end just did not settle, and that is the story of Van Hohenacker's little incident there, as he now makes his way back onto the race in P16. And meanwhile, we can see we have got more drivers now making their way around. Austin Hereford here in P3 as it currently stands. We did just see a lot of changes on our timing screen there. I think they were erroneous and perhaps just glitches, as Caruana is into the pits again. Now this is a little bit of a shock. We have got Caruana in the pits for the second time here. I think something has gone very wrong. Unless he's getting this pit stop out of the way early, he's getting the 2 stops done within the opening 40 minutes, which would be a surprise. As Edward Lack's into the pits from what was P11 at the time. So Edward Lack taking the pit stop after having just cleared his way for the amateur field. He'll be coming back out in it very shortly as we look back up to Jamie Dory, who is now in P10, and he's really the last of our pro drivers who are not having pitted yet. We've still got our top 10 of pros there, yet none of them have yet to pit, and really those pit stops, a lot of drivers are trying to go long, as we do see Matt Emmons has come into the pit from his battle with Nigel Stock. So he's coming from P14 here. And I think we have to ask the question, will Stock, who you're looking at right now, the lime green and white Lamborghini, will he react or will he stay out there on circuit? As I believe we have just had Colin Martin come back into the race. So Colin Martin has rejoined, ladies and gentlemen. So we still now have what is, I believe, that is 30 cars out on circuit. I think, well, 31 cars, because I do not know if we've got Arjen Bakker. I think Bakker has retired from the race, but we do have Colin Martin. He has returned, but he is 2 laps down as it currently stands there with his IT issues and issues with the car, but he is back racing. So we've got a 30 strong field, as I believe Arjen Bakker and Mark Baker are our 2 retirements from the race thus far. And meanwhile, as we look a little bit further back up the order right now, we can see Batak here in P15, P5 in the amateur class as it currently stands. He's closing in on Van Hohenacke, inching ever closer to Van Hohenacke as Matt Emmons now starts to come out of the pits. Of course, these guys making their way through turn 9 past the old pit lane, not the modernised and newer pit lane, but we can see here Batak on the offensive versus Van Hohenacke. He's going to be careful of running wide out of turn number 9. They won't want to pick up too many track limits penalties there before he gets a slowdown penalty, or track limits warnings we should say, before he starts to get formal penalties. As we see, he's on a mission and much tighter there to the apex of 13 versus Van Hohenacke. I do think Van Hohenacke is starting to experience some issues with the tyres perhaps as they make their way down towards 15 here. Now will we see a move from Batak? As we see there behind, you've got the Mercedes of what is Aaron Thompson behind, but he's a lap down of course as they make their way through, and George Bland is the first out of Wayne or Bland to come into the pit. So Wayne is going to be the longest one as we see Van Hohenacke goes into the pit. So Batak now has to really go on full offensive here to try and jump Van Hohenacke, as meanwhile we see that Ollie Wayne staying out there in P11, and I'm hearing that Gareth Mills has just had a major incident of some sort, but he's back racing on circuit here, so I think he's just had an off circuit because he hasn't really dropped any places. He's just dropped some time to Matt Emmons. He is 11 seconds down on Matt Emmons, but he's carrying on in P25 as a lot of our drivers are heading into the pits. Van Hohenacke as well now into the pits. And I believe as he's parked in his pit box, here we also see it there. You've got Darren Doherty coming into the pits as well. All our drives in. And George Bland there having a short stop, a fast stop there as he leaves his pit box. As I say, the field has opened up quite a bit right now, and we're checking in with you guys and girls in the chat. No word as it currently stands, or no further updates there. Be sure to let me know in the chat who you're cheering on right now, or what's been your moment of the race, or who you're predicting to win in either of the classes here. Feel free to chime in with any of that, plus more analysis. Feel free to jump in with your thoughts. As we continue the racing here, 43 minutes in right now. We're not even at the halfway point. It has been very dramatic so far. We'll give you a recap of the opening hour once we complete the first hour, but focusing on the here and now, we can see Jean-Louis Deschamps here, the Delta Motorsport driver, chasing after what is there, Austin Hereford, just ahead of him, and also you've got the Ferrari there, which is a lap down effectively. That is the Ferrari of what is, I believe, Matthew Addy, separating the two, as Harry Melvin is into the pit. So Melvin, who was at the time in P2 versus these guys, has gone into the pits right now, and this could prove critical in terms of the opening strategy. We'll wait and see whether Deschamps and Hereford, how long will they go. And of course we've got Bobby Thompson, who is leading right now by 13 seconds over Hereford. He was 6 seconds ahead of what was Melvin before Melvin pitted. Thompson really doing a good job at leading this right now, but meanwhile looking further down the order, we have got our drivers starting to concertina together, and we've got Edward Lack here as we've got Navarro de Bova going across the... Oh goodness me, and that was very close to seeing Edward Lack's BMW being taken for a ride there, and Navarro just getting it a bit wrong as he rejoins the circuit. Let's take a look back at what happened there. So the rear end just came loose there as he went across the apex of turn 11. And in fact, I would argue he turned in too early for 11 for turn 12. It looks like he turned in a bit too early there. And as a result, that's how the rear end got unsettled. The Porsche, very sensitive to steering inputs, particularly once the tyre wear starts to come in, because of the fact the engine mass is located very close to the rear of the car. And as a result, it gives it great rotation. It gives it great stability as well in the wet on traction. But also it means that the momentum of the car will shift early and Debova into the pits, Debova into the pits very quickly indeed. As meanwhile we look back to our race leader who comes into the pits on schedule here. So Thompson coming in from what is the race lead right now. He's had a 13.5 second gap over Øystein Herford and he's into the pits for his scheduled stop. As we are seeing here, Jean-Louis Deschamps has just been passed by Paul King here. Now this was a little bit unexpected on our timing screen, so let's take a look back at what happened as Paul King comes into the pits and Jean-Louis stays out on circuit. This was only moments to go in the run down the hangar straight here, and Paul King got a very strong toe as they went into turn 15, but Deschamps not opting to battle it. I think wary of the fact they would be coming into the pit soon, and I think instead the option was for King to come into the pits instead. Things are starting to get a little bit topsy-turvy as we are seeing that Jean-Louis Deschamps is our race leader as it currently stands here, although I believe that is the, no, that's the Mercedes, that is a lap down. I think that is the Mercedes of what is... Well, I believe that is Aaron... No, it's not Aaron Thompson there. That is, instead, that must be Ollie Wayne, who's just come out behind. So Wayne, of course, not getting in the way of Deschamps there, but looking back up to our race leader right now. It's all chop and change. Deschamps is the only one of our pros in that top 10 not to pit so far. How long is the Delta Motorsport driver planning to go on this stint? This is his opening stint, of course, but he's doing everything he can. As we see Harry Melvin right now coming out of the opening corner. He's got a little bit of traffic, but Melvin, remember, he made a very early pit stop compared to the rest of the pros here, and he's up into P2 because of it. But what will the question be, of course, of Melvin? How will that benefit him? As we see Paul King as well, having made that stop, has made his way up into P3. We've got Nigel Stock now coming through as everybody's now starting to filter out of the pit lane after their first round of stops, and you can see that's Kenny Heremans who's come out in P5, and it's Didi de Vlaeminck in P6 right now. And look behind him there, you'll see you've got Bobby Thompson who's come out behind, and I think Thompson has had a very long pit stop, or something's gone wrong in the pits because he's lost a lot of places, but he's immediately on the offensive here and they're going to town on Heremans before Heremans has even had a chance to set up a defensive position there. I think Thompson just seizing the opportunity and he's going for the win. Is Thompson, you can see that in the attitude of the car, just going for it early on there, and the number 19 driver on a mission to take that win if he can. But of course he's got a long way to go, and the driver he's now got to close the time down to will be Jean-Louis Deschamps, of course, who's yet to pit. As Thompson, I can tell you, the last lap was a 2:01.31. He is the fastest man out on circuit by a considerable margin compared to others right now. And Thompson doing everything he can in order to gain time and positions, and it is showing very clearly indeed. In fact, the closest driver to him in terms of lap time as it currently stands is the best part of almost a second down, and as that is currently, that's Øystein Herford, I believe, who last time around did a 2:02.57. And meanwhile, as we continue to look around here and we're checking with you guys and girls in the chat here, we can see Rhys Young there cheering on Matt Emmons and George Bland. And speaking of them, of course, well, here is George Bland right now. He is currently in P2 in what is the amateur category. But do keep in mind that Bland has taken a pit stop. Now, with regards to Nigel Stock, that's going to be a big question. Nigel Stock, your race leader in the amateur class, has yet to pit. And here he comes right on the court. It's almost as if the commentator's curse is telling them when to pit right now. But this will be critical, because remember, Stock was really coming up through the field and he was battling with Matt Emmons. Emmons here making his way through turn at number 6 as it currently stands, and the M&V Esports driver here, he'll be coming through into 7 very shortly. But where will he come out in relation to Stock, who he was battling? But I believe it will be the case that as Stock comes into the pits, George Bland will be coming up into the lead very shortly, as all those pit stops are now concluding effectively. And Jean-Louis Deschamps, I should point out, is into the pits and he's taken a tyre change there. If the drivers are up on the jacks there, that means they are taking a tyre change as well as potentially fuel. If they're not up on the jacks, then they're just taking in fuel, and that means that Nigel Stock, by comparison, I believe, because he's solid on the ground, is only taking fuel right now. Something just to watch out for when we do take a look at the pits. But as we look back up to our race leader right now, where it's Harry Melvin leading, and he's got Paul King closing the gap down to him right now. That last lap was a 2:03.32 from Harry Melvin, but Melvin doing a very good job right now and really just holding on to a nice lead in what has been a strong performance. But of course, we've still got the best part of an hour and an hour and 11 minutes to go, so it's not as though it's over yet. But where has stock come out in relation to one? He's coming out of the pits right now. George Bland has already come through to retake the lead of the amateur class here, but where's Delaney? Well, Delaney right now, as he vaporizes himself out of existence and brings himself back into existence, is in P14, and we can see that stock has come out ahead of Delaney. Now, there may be the case that Delaney has already taken his tyre changes, whereas stock has not. We didn't see stock take on the tyres, but stock has gained massively with that pit stop. He's up into P2 in the amateur class, and he's jumped the best part of what is roughly 4 places, as Emmons, meanwhile, to give you an idea, is only just making his way through turn 2 right now. Stock is all the way up onto the Wellington Straight already. Now, looking at some of the other guys in the chat there on the YouTube chat, we've got Joey Fernando Vlogs, and we can see a shout out to Bobby Thompson doing well up front, and we've also got KT Eames there supporting the M&V boys, Emmons, Bland, and of course Wayne, and Wayne here down in P16. Now, whilst things have separated a little bit right now, the closest driver's out on circuit, and in fact, you can see Lovesey here making his way out to turn number 15. He's chasing after Hicks, but he does have the BMW M4 there. I believe that's the BMW of Colin Martin coming into the pit. So Colin Martin did return, and I think he's going for a pit stop here, perhaps a scheduled pit stop. Saying it's gone a bit wrong. Obviously, Colin Martin, with those technical issues earlier, mean that he disconnected from the lobby and has rejoined into the race, but I think he's going to try and push this one to the end. But what has happened to Caruana? That is the question. Well, Caruana, I believe, is out of the race, ladies and gentlemen. We have lost Matt Caruana, so we have had 3 retirements so far. Matt Caruana from the pro class, and Arjan Bakker and Mark Baker from the amateur class. As we come back to your live racing right now, and we can see Melvin trying to get himself past there. What is the back marker? I believe that is one Kurt Van Hohenacker as they come through turn number 8. Then very close to call there for Melvin. I think he left that one very tight to get back onto the racing line. But the closest battle out on circuit right now is Andrew Lovesey, who is chasing down Jaco Boshoff, and the 2 Ignia Motorsport drivers here, I think, lining up a switch of positions very shortly. Perhaps Lovesey is just tapping onto the back of Boshoff, knowing that the Lamborghini has the better straight line speed, and so Lovesey is able to do a bit of fuel saving in his slipstream. But we're just going to take a very short breather, ladies and gentlemen, and take a quick sip of water. As we are hearing, oh goodness me, is that Navarro Debova there, who's off on the circuit? He's off at turn number 9. Navarro having another moment there. He's had a couple of moments now, particularly in the second half of the circuit, and we're just taking a look back, and as he came into the right hand here, does the rear end go? It does indeed. It just simply snaps open him, but he's caught the car very well, but that will be some damage to the tyres, as meanwhile it's the case that Mikkel Andreasen and also Aaron Thompson have passed Navarro Debova with that moment there. But Lovesey versus Boshoff right now, and I do think Lovesey, he has been the faster of the 2 drivers on 1 lap pace. Indeed, race pace is also shown there, and we can see Lovesey easily getting through there, and I do think it's the case the 2 drivers just swapping places, but you can see Boshoff there, I think, trying to get the message through to Lovesey. Okay, you're the faster driver, but please get a move on and pull me up to Vlamink, who's only 5.5 seconds up the road from the pair of us, please, as they make their way through turn 17 and up into 18 right now, and Club Corner, and that is a car off there. And I believe that is a Mercedes, and well, that's definitely not Bobby Thompson. But speaking of Bobby Thompson right now, he is on a charge, and look who he's caught up to already. He's caught up to Heremans here, and he is charging his Thompson as we ride on board with the Mercedes driver. In fact, he's gone for the move, and that is a terrible camera angle as he comes out of turn number 5, and Thompson getting the move done very rapidly indeed, coming out of turn number 5 there. I thought we were going to get the roll cage shot, but it looks as though the camera has slipped behind the roll cage bar there. So Thompson up into P3, and he is on a charge right now. That last lap from Thompson, a 2:01.38. To give you an idea, the fastest lap, which he also owns, was a 2:01.31, and it's the case Thompson is on a mission. The leaders ahead of him are doing 2:03s, low 2:03s. So Thompson is over 1.5 seconds faster than the race leaders right now. In fact, looking at our timing screen, which you guys and girls can't see, ladies and gentlemen, for the most part, Thompson right now is flying around the circuit roughly 1.5 seconds faster than anyone. The closest to him is Jean-Louis Deschamps, who is within a second of his lap times, but otherwise the majority of cases he is charging the Mercedes man right now, and he is showing it indefinitely as he makes his way through turns 13 and 14 once again. And let's take a look back at that pass. To So as they were making their way out of turn 4 here and up into 5, you could see Thompson had the momentum immediately, and Heremans, I should say, had no way to respond. I think it just caught him by surprise there. And meanwhile, a little bit further back, we of course have got the Norwegian Øystein Herford here making his way through, as we see that Gareth Mills has had an off track and he's just rejoined the circuit. And our time screens have glitched a little bit there in regards to Mills' car as they make their way into turn number 15 right now, and Herford trying to find a way past Boshoff here, and Boshoff falling away. As we've also got Ben Hicks ahead of him now. Hicks has got himself up into that position, but you can see Herford trying to find his way through, not able to at this point in time as they come through turns number 17 and into 18, into club corner here to complete another lap, to complete what is lap 26 and go on to lap number 27. As they make their way charging down towards turn number 1 once again. And as they come through the right-hander here, we can see also there we've got Lucy Emmons supporting the M&V boys as they come through the corners. And as they proceed to flow through, it is the case that right now, no changes as it currently stands, as all of our drivers come through turn number 4 and head up into 5 once again here. And as they proceed to do so, it is the case that Herford hunting the back of Boshoff right now. But you can see Herford getting closer and closer in that BMW. But when it's on the straight, he barely gains. And particularly Boshoff getting the slipstream off of Hicks ahead of him right now. It's the case that the BMW driver will need to get it done through the corners. As we ride on board here with the BMW M4 of Øystein Herford, the Norwegian driver very tactical with the way he approaches the corners. We do know that. And as he comes out of turn number 7, we've got a slow car there on the apex straight. That's Gareth Mills there. So that prevented Herford from potentially looking on the inside. But you could see immediately Boshoff going defensive as they get the long run up towards turn number 9 here. And as they go through the right-hander, it is the case that right now Boshoff really struggling for apex speed versus Herford as they now come down into the sweeping section. But look at Hicks as well. Hicks almost going a bit defensive into turn 10 there. And that's going to cost Boshoff a bit of time. But I think it's also going to mean that Hicks gives Boshoff a massive tow down the hanger straight here as they come out of 13 and into 14 here. And as they come charge out, watch the Lamborghinis now start to fly here. And it's the case that Herford cannot find a way through as he starts to build up speed. But he's just struggling to build up the speed compared to the two in front of him here. And that is the deficit of that BMW's engine. As we see Boshoff going past Hicks here into turn number 15. And Herford's trying to look for a way through, but he can't find it. And that's the snap on the brakes just before he runs into the back of Hicks there. And Hicks shutting the door very nicely, saying, well, my teammate can come through, but not you, kind sir, as they make their way into 17 and 18. Now looking back to the exterior cameras, you do have to imagine, as we see there, we do have a Mercedes going into the pits, and that's Aaron Thompson into the pits. He is the best part of a lap down, of course. It's the case that our Herford here continue to battle with Hicks and Boshoff as they come through the right-hander here into turn 1 and through to turn 2 they come, and no way through as it currently stands. And we are, I believe it's the case that Emmons versus Porter here. What's happened to Porter? Well, I think Porter's dropped down the order. I think that's a glitch in our time screens right now, folks, because Porter does not seem to be anywhere near Emmons as it currently stands. So we will take a look back at what's happening in that battle for P8 right now. No change as it currently stands here. I think we are going to have to wait a little bit. But meanwhile, what I can tell you is starting to build up is Matthew Addy here trying to battle for P3 in the amateur class. Of course, this is for P14 overall. And you can see there as Delaney disappears out of the universe very briefly, it's the case that Delaney runs wide there out of 17 and 18. And as a result, Addy gains the place there as they come through into turn number 1 once again. And Addy trying to close up to Stock and Bland here. And I do think if I'm going to put an outside bet on anyone here, I think Addy could be within an outside chance here, if not just the podium, potentially winning this race in the amateur class, because he is showing a lot of pace right now as they make their way through. And I think Didi Valaming has just had an error somewhere. In fact, well, that looks as though that's coming out of turn number 9. He's going to have to be careful when he rejoins the circuit, because a lot of drivers are coming through at high speed into turn 10 right now. But I think he's rejoined it just in time. But what happened to Didi Valaming? Well, we look back to Edward Lack firstly, who is being chased by Jean-Louis Deschamps, but both of them will be catching up to the Porsche driver ahead right now. As you see there, you've got Mikkel Andreasen just behind Edward Lack, and then you've got Jean-Louis Deschamps, who's just got himself past the Barreau de Bova there as they come out of turn number 14 and head down the hanger straight once more. And it's starting to get interwoven here with amateur drivers acting as the back markers, if you will. But meanwhile, we can see that Øystein Herford has finally got past Ben Hicks for P7. How did he do it? Let's take a look back. So it was a drag race down the hanger straight, and you could see that Hicks did not have the toe of Boshoff ahead of him, and Hereford got as close as possible as he could, and he got the move done through 15 there. Hereford being late on the brakes and making the BMW count. As they came down into 16, you could see Hicks tried for the comeback move there, but I think recognised that the BMW was always going to be later on the brakes, and that's why he was not able to get the return move done there, as they make their way now through what is turns 3 and 4, and it is the case Oystein starting to break away is the Norwegian as he heads after what is Boshoff ahead of him. And meanwhile, where it's the case that Deshaun, well, we've got a lot of smoke up there. Once again, I think that's Didi Vlaming has had another incident, because we have got a lot of smoke on the apex of turn 3. Vlaming has had another moment. What's happened this time? So coming through 1 and into 2, I'm going to predict under braking the car's gone a little bit sideways into 3. No, it is. He's tried to rotate the car through the corner. That's where it's gone wrong. And Lack there with cat-like reflexes to dodge the wayward Porsche there. And that will Lack definitely shine that he's had a lot of cups of coffee before going racing today, because Lack is pushing on right now. And we are looking at our P9 man, the CXR Project Black machine in P9 overall and P9 for the pros, as he comes out onto what is the old start-finish straight, of course, now coming into turn number 9. Now, where can Lack go from here is the big question. Well, really, I think for Lack, it is more of a question now of keeping it consistent and waiting to see how the race evolves. He's 6.5 seconds down on Hicks in P8 here, and he needs to wait for Hicks, Hereford and Boshoff to keep fighting one another, because their fighting will cost them time, of course. But meanwhile, looking a little bit further up, we can see that Hereford, meanwhile, chasing after Boshoff here, and he's looking for a similar move as he did with Hicks only moments ago into 15. But unfortunately, the full send race machine there not able to find a way through as they come down into turn number 16 once again here, and he's going to have to wait another lap as they come through 16 and 17. And we can see there we have got our dear fellow from Ignium Motorsport there, supported Ignium Motorsport continuously, wishing them as well as possible. And 6000 Kashmir fan would love a tiny bit more track sound in the mix, commentating on point. Appreciate the feedback. We will slightly boost the track sound for you, and hopefully that is a-okay. We're just giving it a small boost for you now, otherwise we won't go too much further. But feel free to give us feedback, folks, on what we can improve with the broadcast as well. But as we focus back on the battling right now, we see Hereford battling with Boshoff here, and both drivers here taking very different lines to one another, as we do check in with race control here. No information from race control, and as a result we carry on all the same. Of course, I'm looking at this on a separate monitor, folks, but it is the case that right now we're not hearing anything from our stewards, so we are continuing all the racing all the same, as it is the case that Hereford versus Boshoff here, and Boshoff doing everything he can in order to be able to hold on to that position for the time being. Now, you do have to wonder at this point, of course, with Boshoff, by racing as hard as he is he taking away the tyre life that he does have available to him? And you can see he's under a huge amount of pressure from Hereford behind as they make their way up into 9 this time. And we ride on board the gearbox here, and this is going to be uncomfortable viewing for some at how close that BMW is going to get to the back of that Lamborghini. But as they come through turn 9 up into 10 and 11, it is the case right now that you can see into the sweepers there, with the dirty air is going to affect the frontline steering input of that BMW. Hereford backs off, but look how much he's backed off, so he can get a really strong run through 13, and this is where he's doing it. He's getting the run out of 13 and 14. Now he is going to close up. It is going to be a long drag race down the hanger straight here, and as we look to the blimp camera here, we can see they both move out the way of the back markers lifting off. I believe that is Andrew Lovesey having to back out there as they make their way through the corner, although I don't think that should be Lovesey. No, that is Lovesey. He has backed out of it completely, and I'm not sure what's happened to Lovesey, but something has gone very wrong with the car here, as he's backed out from the pair of them right now and is tucked in behind instead. And I think this may be a strategic call from Ignium Motorsport. I think what they may have done, if Lovesey doesn't have a problem with the car, because I'm not seeing anything to tell me that he's had an incident or made a mistake or run off circuit, what I think they're trying to do is they're going to try and get Lovesey to get in the way of Hereford to release what is Boshoff there and give Boshoff the opportunity to run stronger. But I'm not seeing anything on my screens or data to say that Lovesey has had an off track or anything, but you can see Hereford continuing to look for that place. He's going for every sort of line to try and get himself the best possible run out of the corners, because what you can tell is the fact he hasn't got the straight line acceleration of the Lamborghini. So what he's doing instead, he's taking very late apexes on every single corner, and what he's trying to do that for is to give himself the slingshot out the corner where he has the greatest acceleration zone coming out of each corner. It costs him the apex speed initially, but what it gives him, knowing the fact that the opponent ahead of him, i.e. Boshoff, has such poor apex speed by comparison, it's giving Hereford the ability to stay close, and this is where he's going to do it. If he's going to do it now, he's on the inside into turn 8. They come through the corner here, and as they make their way onto the old start-finish straight, it's going to be BMW on the inside, Lamborghini on the outside. They come into turn number 9, and as they do, I think it's Hereford who's got it under braking, and he's done it. But remember, this is an opportunity for Boshoff to try and come back with the momentum he'll gain from that outside line through 9, but I think the move is done here. I think the Lamborghini has started to hit a bit of a cliff in terms of those tyres, and instead Hereford is now holding on to that position. You can see, in fact, as they sweep through the medium speed sweeping section of 11 through to 14, it is the case Hereford is pulling away very rapidly indeed. He's already pulled 4 tenths a second through those 4 corners alone. Now, meanwhile, I am hearing that further down the order, he's dropped into P26. Tom Delaney has had an incident. Let's find out. Well, Tom Delaney has just retired from the race, in fact, so that is very unfortunate, I believe. Well, I'm not sure. There seems to be a little bit of a glitch on our cameras there for you folks, but Delaney right now he's in the pits that currently stands. We will try and take a look back at that incident one more time. And no, we are not going to get any idea of what happened there. So we've heard that there's been multiple off tracks with Delaney, but he's in the pits right now. But we now come back to your live action, of course, and we get away from the pit lane to look at Ollie Wayne, who is chasing down Matthew Addy here. And this is the battle for what is P14 out on circuit, P3 in the amateur class, as they make their way through. As they do so here, you can see that is the case that Nigel Stock just ahead of them as well, but George Bland, the best part of 30 seconds up the road from these guys, leading the amateur class in P11. But focusing on this battle for what is P2 in the AM class, or what is P13 overall, you can see all 3 drivers working as hard as possible right now, as we are hearing that Vlaming has had another incident very recently, and that's Diva Vlaming, who's now down in P12 overall. He's just up the road from these guys, but as they make their way through, we can see that all 3 of our amateur drivers here pushing hard, knowing those points are on the table and they want every single one of them. And as they come through the corners here, it is the case building up the speed in the long run down towards what is turn number 1 and into 2 they go, going on to what is their 32nd lap of racing here, and you can imagine that tiredness is starting to kick in. It's going to be one of those ones whereby exhaustion is building, as we see their stock has gone deep into 3, and as a result, as he holds the inside into 4, it's going to be Addy going all the way round the houses here, and as they come through 5, it's now the drag race down the Wellington straight here, and this is the opportunity for both the Mercedes and the Lamborghini to gain. But I think Stock's going to need to go defensive here, as it looks as though Wayne's looking for the move on the inside. He goes to the inside, does Wayne, through into turn 6. There you go, the number 186 driver looks to the inside versus Stock, but they sweep back into turn 7. Stock's still there on the inside, but I think Wayne has got the move done there as they come through, and it's the case the Mercedes has gained the place, and Stock, with one mistake into braking into turn 3, has lost 2 places as they now carry on through turn number 8 once again here and head up towards turn number 9. Very close between these guys right now, and pressing on as they come through turn number 9 and head up into 10 through to 14 once again. But let's just take a look back at how that all kicked off, of course, with regards to Stock's mistake. As they were coming through turn 2 here, you're going to see Stock goes very late on the brakes, and Addy sends it on the inside here. And in fact, I think it was more the fact that Addy sent it to the inside rather than Stock making a lock up on the brakes as we look back. But Addy definitely bowled on the brakes, and you can see now weaving a little bit coming out onto where's the hanger straight here. He's wary of the fact that Mercedes behind him in the hands of Wayne is going to be very fast in the straights versus the Ferrari 488. And as they come down into turn 15, it's the case that Addy has those better apex speeds, but he's not able to maintain that advantage on the straights. As they make their way through, we just check in with race control once again, and nothing at the moment. And as he makes his way through turn number 17 and 18, we can see here that Ollie Wayne doing everything he can right now to chase after Addy. But Addy is pulling away a little bit here, and Addy really showing a strong run of form right now. And that last lap from Addy, a very good one despite the overtake. A 203.09 versus Ollie Wayne's 202.89 there, and Stock a 203.63. Of course, the overtakes would have affected their lap time, but it is definitely the case that Addy's showing very strong performance here, and we love to see this from Addy, as I believe that is Aaron Thompson parked on the grass there, coming out of turn number 4, though I may be mistaken. I thought I just saw a very brief glimpse of a car as they make their way down. We've got Tom Porter just coming into the pit lane. I can see him outside of the commentary box window right now, not on camera of course, but we can see Addy starting to break away. Meanwhile, in the battle for what is P8 here, we see we've got Ben Hicks just ahead of Jean-Louis Deschamps, and we've also got Edward Lack. And I believe these guys, in fact, have changed positions a little bit. But Edward Lack, well, speaking of a driver who's had it all to do in this race, Lack right now, remember earlier on, ladies and gentlemen, he started right at the front of the pro category, given the fact that things had not worked out, and he made his way right up into the very top positions of the pro class, only to make that one mistake into turn 1, which saw him drop a considerable way down the order. Well, I believe it was Lack. There's also a couple other drivers who had similar mistakes, and it is the case that Lack right now has found his way out of the AM battles and up into the pro battles here, and is pressing on as Lovesey has come into the pits for his second pit stop. Andrew Lovesey in from what was at the time P6, and now he has pitted, and they continue on all the same. As meanwhile, Deschamps continues to close in here on what is back of Hicks. He can't find a way through at the moment, of course, the Delta Motorsport driver versus the Ignium Motorsport driver. But as they come out of 4, again, it's that cutback line which we've seen so many drivers use to get the accelerational advantage on the Lamborghini. And as they come out of what is turn 5, the long run down the Wellington straight right now, it is the case that Deschamps looks to the inside versus Hicks on the outside. They go into 6 here, and Hicks not close enough to be alongside for the cutback to the inside into 7. And as a result, Deschamps showing his battling credentials here, up into P7 right now, Deschamps, as they make their way out of the right-hander of 7 and up into 8, and they come onto the old start-finish straight. Now, I do appreciate we have got 50 minutes of racing to go. Let's give you a quick recap of everything that has happened so far from driver to driver. So, currently leading is Harry Melvin, pitted quite early on, run a consistent race in his opening stint, and the second stint has also been a strong one so far. He is leading by 9.7 seconds over the fastest man on circuit, and then some. The Next Gen Racing with Barracuda Motorsport driver of Bobby Thompson, on his debut in the series tonight, is on a charge in that Mercedes, and he is lapping, I can tell you, the best part of 1 to 1.5 seconds, if not 2 seconds faster than anybody else around the circuit right now. This is phenomenal stuff from our P2 man. Paul King in P3, he's the best part of a further 8 seconds down on Thompson. And we can see here the Lamborghini driver doing everything he needs to right now to keep it nice and clean. Kenny Herriman's in P4, coming through as well. And Harriman really had to battle his way from the midfield of the pro drivers, now in some clear air. And Oystein Herford, the driver with the overall full send capabilities in that BMW M4, has had to work hard to get past the Ignium Motorsport drives of Boshoff and Hicks. But he's found a way through, and he's up into P5 as it currently stands. The BMW driver here putting in a very strong performance and having to work that BMW very hard. Boshoff, meanwhile, Jaco Boshoff in P6, seemingly struggling a little bit at the midpoint in each of his stints. The lap times do seem to fall off, but Boshoff pressing on all the same here, 5.8 seconds down on Oystein Herford. Then we've got Jean-Louis Deschamps in P7 right now, being very heavily involved in the back and forth battles here, Deschamps, and really showing his battling credentials, but I think wishing for some clearer air. And then we've got a battle brewing for P8 right now. It's Ben Hicks versus Edward Lack. Now, Hicks has been right in the midst of a lot of the battling, also trading places with his teammates, in particular Boshoff and also Lovesey. Lovesey has recently pitted and come back out in P17, I should point out, but it's Edward Lack behind who we've all got eyes on to a degree in terms of making a recovery drive. At the start of the race, Edward Lack dropped down into the midfield of the amateur class and had to battle past the likes of Wayne, Addy, Bland, Stock and Evans. Time and time again, the drivers would just not let him go. Well, they don't have to let him go, of course, but they just wanted to battle him, and it's cost Lack a huge amount of time. But he's finally cleared them and is now battling with light flight class drivers. Vlamink, meanwhile, who was running a very strong race in the top 5 overall and in the pro category, has had a number of offs recently, and that has seen him drop all the way down to P10 and 30 seconds off of Edward Lack. Then you come on to P11, which is George Bland right now, leading the amateur class by what is 5.7 seconds over Matthew Addy, and Bland putting in a very strong performance. Our championship leader, of course, in the amateur class right now, coming back to try and hold on to that lead and extend his lead as much as possible. But he is being pursued by Matthew Addy here, who is leading the battle for P2 in the amateur class versus Ollie Wayne as they make their way around here. And you can see as they come through turns 8 into 9 right now, it is the case that Addy has got Ollie Wayne all over back him. Wayne, of course, returning after missing Le Mans last time out in round number 5, and he has put in a solid performance so far and really has been pushing hard to be on that podium. Nigel Stott, meanwhile, showing a very strong performance in his first stint, but his second stint has been a little bit weaker in terms of overall pace. But the English driver, we suspect, is perhaps doing a little bit of tyre and fuel saving right now, because he's dropped out of the battle for P2 and instead is focusing on P4 in the average class, P14 overall. And then we've got Jamie Dory here, who is making a recovery drive right now. Did drop a long way down the order to Jamie Dory, but he is trying to get his way up through the field right now. And it is the case, he is pressing on as rapidly as possible here. The pro driver had a strong opening stint to see it all go wrong. Meanwhile, we've got Matt Emmons here in P16, the M&V esports driver here, making his way around. And a strong showing for Matt Emmons. He hasn't had too many instances or places where he's had an off so far. In P5 in the amateur class, P16 overall, pressing on and continuing to chase after Nigel Stock, who is the best part of 15 seconds up the road. Andrew Lovesley's just made his second pit stop, so he's the first of our drivers in our top 20 to make their second scheduled stop here. And Lovesley, who was in, we believe it was P5 before he pitted, now down in P17. He's got a bit of traffic to cipher his way through, but he is chasing after a top 5 finish today in the pro category. Alexander Patak, meanwhile, down in what is P6 in the amateur class right now. He's only taken one pit stop so far. He is pressing on. It has not been a good race for Patak thus far, and he is trying to find his way back into things, as is the same for Darren Doherty, who was looking strong earlier on, but he has fallen a little bit back right now, as he's got that is the BMW there of, I believe that is Austin Hereford coming up to lap him. Then we've got Mikkel Andreasen finishing off our top 20 right now. The slow and steady racing driver had a disastrous opening stint, but is making a good recovery effort. P8 in the amateur class right now, P20 overall. Then we've got Navarro de Bova here, who's had a couple of spins, and he gets it a bit wrong there, coming through turns 11 and 12, and has to cut there. And he's been struggling with these medium speed apex corners from turns 10 through to 14. And I think Navarro at this point just trying to soldier on to get to the end of the race. And then we've got Tom Porter in P22 right now, P10 in the amateur class, chasing after Navarro de Bova, who is the best part of 15 seconds up the road. Jeremy de Bova, meanwhile, the father of the de Bova family, in what is P23 as it currently stands, making his way around, had a disastrous opening stint, and I think Jeremy just focusing on bringing the car home right now and showing his race to the end credentials. And then we've got Kurt Van Harnacker in P24, who has had a very difficult race, was looking strong earlier on, but it was the case, mistakes have crept in and it has not worked out. Mark Sykes the same, a strong start, only to be undermined by some incidents, and Sykes now down in P25, that is P12 in the amateur class. That's our top 25 for you, ladies and gentlemen. We've got Gareth Mills in P26 here, and then we have got Aaron Thompson, who is charging after Mills. Aaron Thompson having a disastrous moment, which has dropped him all the way down the field and trying to chase after. And then we've got Colin Martin, a lap down with technical issues where he was disconnected and has reconnected in P28. And we've also had the 4 retirements, 3 amateurs and 1 pro. The 3 amateurs being Tom Delaney, Arjen Bakker and Mark Baker, and the 1 retirement of Matt Caruana. So that is a summary of how things have gone. And now we look back up to our race leaders once again to see how things continue to play out. And we see there Tom Delaney saying in both the YouTube and also the Facebook chat there, the Wi-Fi died, unfortunately. So that is very unfortunate for you, Delaney. It was looking a very strong performance, but we look forward to having you back next time around, and definitely a lot to build upon there. As we also there do have Fish saying good evening in the YouTube chat, and Alex Thompson replying to Colin Martin with regards to the internet issues there. So unfortunate for some of our drivers there, as we do have that is a BMW going very slow. I think that's Gareth Mills there pulling out the way, going into turn number 3. And Gareth Mills has just jumped to the pits. There might be a problem with the car that they've got to fix. I think there is a puncture on what is the front right tyre there. It does not look like it's seated properly on the car anymore. But meanwhile, with what is now 43 minutes of racing to go, we see Harry Melvin leading right now, comfortably by 4.5 seconds over Bobby Thompson, although Thompson is closing that gap down. This is the fastest man still on the circuit, and Thompson is on a charge, trying to catch up to our race leader. Of course, both of them have yet to make their second stop. We will have to wait and see, with regards to the stops, who's going to be in the pits for a longer period of time. Meanwhile, Kenny Herriman's in P3 as it currently stands here, chasing after, and no major battle in our pro category right now. But meanwhile, George Bland versus Ollie Wayne, the battle continues here, and this is the battle for the lead of the amateur category. And these are the two battling for the championship lead in the amateur class, and it looks as though Wayne going for the move on the inside into 15 versus Bland, and they've got to be so careful here, because they will not want to have an instant either of them, because it will cost them massive points. And look at Addy looking threatening in the distance, as I see there Navarro de Bova's had an off at turn 15 in the through the camera shot, but focusing on the here and now as we jump on board with George Bland. We can see he's gone wide. George Bland has gone wide out of turn number 17, and Ollie Wayne is up into the lead as he jumps up into P10. And look at Addy. Addy is all over the back of these guys. He's going to capitalise. He's going into turn 1. Bland backs out of it, but Addy goes to the double move here. This is very risky, and Addy on a charge, but he can't quite get it as they come into turn 2 and then into 3. And look at Bland. He's now trying to get back in, but Addy with a double move there. Now that is brave. I would not expect that, but the battle continues as Wayne comes up the inside into 4 here. Now how will Addy respond, as it looks as though Wayne has got a bit of snap oversteer on exit of 4 as they come through 5 here. It's the case now that Wayne has to go defensive into 6. Down the Wellington straight they come here, and look at Bland. He's trying to get in the mix as well. They go 3 wide. This is the battle for the amateur lead as Bland looks to the inside, Wayne in the middle and Addy on the outside. And it's the case, I think it's the case, that Wayne has gone wide. He's gone deep as we look to what is the blimp camera right now. As you see, Bland has gone deep into turn number 7, and as they come out of the corner here in the charge, it's Addy back up into the race lead right now, and we can see that now Wayne has got Bland over the back of him, and Addy showing that he wants to be in that title fight. As we now look back to the live pictures closer in, and you can see that Wayne losing that position to Addy. Addy came out of nowhere there and is really trying to break away once again, but I think it's the straight line speed deficit of that Ferrari that just holds it off of being able to break away completely. And remember, all 3 of these drivers have yet to make their second stop, so as a result they are all waiting to see who flinches first, as well as we hear Edward Lack and Ben Hicks are both in the pits for the Pro Class right now. But as it continues, and I do believe that Bobby Thompson has passed Harry Melvin. I think Melvin's actually had an incident. We'll look at that very shortly, folks. We'll have a change for overall lead and Pro Class lead, but battling here once again, Wayne on the inside of Addy. Into turn 15 they go, and as they come through here, Addy giving the space up. And I think Addy might be coming into the pits. He's coming in. That is Addy into the pits, so that was preempted. And as a result, now Addy will have the undercut on the pair of these drivers should they all have equal length pit stops. And Addy is the first to call the bluff here. Now, how will Wayne and Bland respond? That will be the big question. But from one change of race lead to another, Bobby Thompson is now leading this race. And let's find out what happened to Harry Melvin, who was leading only moments ago. So making his way through turn 2 and into 3 here, we see the Lamborghini driver, the number 67 car, going into the braking zone. Does the there's contact. It's the number 25 car that made contact, and that is a disaster when it's your own. I think that's his own teammate from Ignium Motorsport as well. And I think there's going to be a few words between the 2 drivers afterwards, because that was the number 25 car of Jaco Boshoff who tapped the back of Melvin. It's happened, and that has released Thompson into lead, and Melvin has responded immediately by going into the pits. I think the idea behind this is he's got to get the damage off the car, and it's called his pit stop early, albeit this is at the right time for a second stop. We're at the 80-minute, well, the 81-minute mark now, so this is a typical point for that pit stop. As we look a little bit further back down the order right now, we can see Kurt Van Hoenacker chasing after Navarro de Bova here for P23 overall, and that is, of course, the battle for what is P10 in the amateur class, and he's got him on the inside into turn number 6, and Navarro, I think, just trying to creep the car home. They're both at the part of the same team, both are part of the McChallenge team, so I don't think they're going to fight one another too much, but the pit stops are now starting to occur all over again. And as they make their way around right now, we can see all our drivers coming through, and Bobby Thompson doing everything he can to hold on. As we see Kenny Herons right now making his way down into turn number 6 here. And as we look around the circuit right now, those strategies playing out. Paul King and Melvin in the pits, of course, and indeed it is a strong performance from Harry Melvin, given the fact he's not been feeling too well going into this race. What with his second dose of the COVID vaccine, from what we asked him going into the racing tonight. But as they make the way, sorry, it was not Harry Melvin, my apologies, that was someone else, but we are hearing in the chat from Paul Melvin, not bad, as Harry Melvin is not feeling too well. My apologies, getting 2 drivers confused there with their stories going into tonight, but it is the case that we are pleased to see Harry Melvin pressing on despite his difficulties. As the camera flicks around right now, and he comes out the pits in what appears to be here P5, and we see meanwhile Ollie Wayne staying out in P6 right now with all the pit stops happening. And we do have the fact that is the case that both George Black Bland and also what is Matthew Addy have both pitted. Well, Addy has already pitted, but look at Addy. He's come out in so much traffic. He's come out behind Stock, behind Doherty, behind Emmons, and this is a disaster for Addy because in this traffic he will not be able to gain. He will lose time by running the dirty early straight. He's got a battle for position. Now, of course, the big question will be how long will Bland be in the pits for, and then when will Wayne respond? We'll wait and see. But as we can see them making their way down into turn number 15 right now, it's the case that Emmons under pressure here from Doherty, and behind it is Stock and Addy right at the back of this lot, and Bland is still in his pit box. I'm looking out my window right now, ladies and gentlemen, and I can tell you he's still there. As we see, one driver does get out of the way. That's Doherty who's gone into the pits here. Meanwhile, it is the case that Addy making his way through turns 16 and 17 and coming into 18. And meanwhile, what's happening with Bland in the pits? Well, he's still there. They've just dropped him off the jacks, so he's coming out the pits right now, and I do think Addy is going to gain here. Yep, he's definitely going to gain the position of a Bland. He's still just made his way down the pit lane here, so Addy has regained the lead, what is the overall effective lead, we believe, in what is the amateur cars. Well, I say that, in fact, we do have it listed here that a good number of our drivers ahead of him have made second stops already. Nigel Stock, for example, and also Matt Evans. So it may be the case that we've got this a little bit wrong right now, and instead they have actually gained through taking early stops. We will wait and find out for you, ladies and gentlemen, but it is getting a little bit interwoven right now because some drivers have had to make early stops to repair damage earlier in the race. But we see Batak, meanwhile, in P10 as it currently stands. He has definitely only made one stop, the Switchback Motorsport driver, and you can see he is chasing after what is there, the back marker. I believe that is not a lead car there. I believe that is the back marker of what is Van Hohenacker in the Porsche, who will be required to move out the way when the blue flags wave. But meanwhile, Stock chasing after Matt Evans. This is in the battle for P14. This is P3 in the amateur class as it is. And as Stock makes his way to the inside here into turn number 9, they both go into the corner, and that had some rather nasty flashbacks to what could have been a similar incident to the Hamilton-Verstappen incident earlier on in the Formula 1 season. But I believe as they make their way out of turn 9 and up through turns 10, 11 and 12, we can see that Stock really looking fighty right now versus Emmons, and Emmons needing to find a way to hold on for the time being as they come surging through turns 13 and 14 here, and Emmons under a lot of pressure right now as they make their way through the corners once again onto the hangar straight here, and you can see he's having to go defensive. Emmons, he hasn't got the straight line speed versus Stock's Lamborghini, but the BMW driver will brake heavily into turn 15, and as they do so here, there's no way through for Stock, or is there, as he goes all the way around the outside but runs a little bit wide. But as they come into the heavy braking zone here for turn 16, I think Stock has got it done as they go through. Or will Emmons find a way to cut back in? Nope, Stock has got the move done for P14, a critical move here as it means he can start to run away potentially as they come out to the final corner and now head up onto another lap here, going on to what is their 41st tour of the Silverstone circuit. But you can see that Emmons very aggressive into turn 1. He does not want to give this fight up, does the BMW driver, as they make their way into turn number 3. Heavy on the brakes here, and Addy inching ever closer to the pair of them behind the Ferrari driver, the red and white Ferrari driver, as they come through. As they surge through what is turns 4 and up into 5, this is where Stock should break away, and this is where the BMW of Emmons will be vulnerable to the Ferrari of Addy, who chases after him. And as we ride on board here with Matthew Addy, he goes on the offensive here, chasing after Emmons as they make their run down towards turn number 6. And as they come into the braking zone here, we see the different lines between the three drives, where Stock takes a much deeper braking line into turn 6, Emmons takes a middle ground line, and then Addy takes a very offensive line into the corner. I think he's sensitive to the fact that he's got the dirty air from the back of Emmons' car and is taking an early apex there in order to potentially avoid the dirty air, giving him additional understeer into the corner. But we are hearing that Darren Doherty has just had a major incident out there on the circuit, ladies and gentlemen, and I believe Darren Doherty is down in what is P22, and that car is looking very worse aware what's happened to our P22 man. So coming up into turn 15, only moments to go here, and now what has happened into the right handle? The rear is gone, and that car has just simply slid sideways, and that is the end of the story there, or is it, as he's tried to spin it round? No, that is the end of the story for Doherty, as he's then had to rejoin. And I think, in fact, a tyre's got, that looks as though he's got a puncture, because he is struggling to get that car in. I think it's the rear right-hand tyre that's got a puncture there, ladies and gentlemen, and I think that slide just finished off the tyre as he makes his way into the pit lane. But meanwhile, Bobby Thompson continuing to dominate right now, as we're looking at our race leader here, who has got a gap of 26 seconds to Kenny Heremans in P2. But remember, we do have the interweaving of pit stops right now, and the big question is on this man who, after the incident with his teammate whilst he was leading, will he come back out ahead of Thompson? That is the big question. Meanwhile, Lovesy a little bit further back, chasing after Jamie Dory here in the pro category as they both make their way through what is turn number 9, and as they come through the corner here and head up towards 10 through to 14, there's no change that currently stands here. Porsche versus Mercedes. As they come through turns 11, 12 and 13, we can see the sweep section of corners here. The Porsche having the better handling into the corners, but as they come out of 13, what speed he carries on the apex there will be neutralised by the straight line acceleration, the raw engine power of that V8 on the Mercedes as they come charging in. It's AMG versus Porsche as they come down towards turn 15 here. Down the hanger straight they come now. Will Lovesy go for the move? He's going to look to the inside, and as they come into the corner, they cut through, and Lovesy goes all in here. He puts all of his chips in, and as they come through the corner, we can see up ahead. Meanwhile, we've got a battle brewing there between drivers, but focusing on the here and now. They're still side by side coming up into 16, and it is the case that, well, Dory holding on for now, and Dory doing everything he can to hold into that position and keeping it just about there, just having the bravery to take back the inside line of what was turn 16 and then going to the outside of 17. A great battle between the pair of them, and Ollie Wayne is into the pits, ladies and gentlemen. So our amateur class leader has just come into the pits, and this could be a change in the tail for them. But meanwhile, looking at this battle for P7 right now, no change that currently stands. But I can tell you now we have a new leader in the amateur class. You're looking at him. It's Alexander Batak from Switchback Motorsport, who's up there. But remember, Ollie Wayne, who's actually just starting to leave the pits here. Now, where's Nigel Stock in all of this? Well, Stock is only just coming down what is the Wellington Straight, or not Wellington, the Hangar Straight here, I'll say, and as a result, well, Stock is due. Well, he's had his 2 pit stops here, but Wayne has really made this work, and I think, in fact, Batak, who does have to take 1 more pit stop according to our screens here, it is the case that right now Wayne, who has come out all the way, he's already into turn 3, and Stock hasn't even come across the start-finish line yet. It is the case that Wayne right now could be running away with this and sneaking the win from Stock, Emmons and Addy and Bland here, and if so, that would be phenomenal. With such a short stop in his second stop here, we will wait and see. We've still got half an hour to go yet, ladies and gentlemen, so it could all be through surprises. Anything can happen until the checkered flag drops, but it is the case right now that Wayne looking very strong as Heremans is into the pits from what was at the time it was P2, but he's into the pits, and meanwhile it's now Austin Hereford who's got himself back up into what is P2 as it currently stands, and as they make their way through the corners right now, Hereford doing everything he needs to there, as we see that I believe that is Kurt Van Hoenacker in the rear of the camera shot, just having a little bit of a square off there with Jean-Louis Deschamps, but he's not allowed to battle with him too much, of course, because he is a lap down versus Deschamps, and as a result blue flags are being waved. But Harry Melvin right now responding to those lap times being set by Bobby Thompson, a 2:01.4 from Harry Melvin that time round. Thompson meanwhile leading on a 2:01.5, so I think Melvin is going to win. I think he feels that he can take the fight to Thompson through the strategy right now, as looking a bit further up the order from where we're looking, we can see that we've got Lovesy battling with Dory still. The battle continues as Alexander Batak comes into the pits for his second pit stop, and Wayne, who was 26 seconds down on him, we believe Ollie Wayne will re-inherit that lead, as we can see. And meanwhile, looking at these guys and looking further back, we've got Matt Emmons versus Matthew Addy, and these two continue to battle here, and I think they have had a brief change of places, but as they make their way out of 13 and on to 14 here, it is the case as they come charging through the corner right now. We can see Addy getting closer and closer down the hanger straight. Now, will the Ferrari driver look for the move here? They are battling for position. This is the battle for P4 in the amateur class as it currently stands. Both drivers have made their pit stops, so this is a fight to the finish, and Stock is just up the road, of course, breaking away in the Lamborghini, but as we see him at the forefront of your picture, you can see Emmons going a little bit defensive into 60 initially as Addy gets very close under braking there, but no change between the two of them so far. The MV Esports driver getting a solid result here, and I think he'd be very pleased if he could hold on to this result. Meanwhile, Alexander Batak is coming out the pits here. Now, this could really upset things for our amateur drivers around him as we see Stock coming out, and it is the case. It's Batak versus Stock. They come through turn 2, and Batak is on the inside. He's going to go late on the brakes here, and he will be coming through as we see Gareth Mills moves out the way, but Stock sweeps all the way around the outside. Now, will Batak find a way back? Will he be able to get back in there, or will it be too much as Stock makes his way through turn 4 and up into 5? We ride on board the gearbox here. And you can see he is pulling away from Batak, but will Batak be able to swing back it? And remember, it is the case that Stock had that pit stop much earlier on here, so he may have to nurse the car a little bit more, whereas Batak may be able to go a little bit more on the offensive early on come this second stint. We will wait and see, but Batak has been waiting long, and he has jumped Emmons, Addy, Bland and Porter for all this. Andreasen is into the pits from what was P18 as it currently stands, but we can definitely see now how it is the case that Stock is pulling away and doing a very strong job of it as they make their way charging down now towards turn number 9 once again here on what is lap number 44. And as they do so here, I do think the Batak's going to have to find some magic here, as we are hearing that Lovesey and Dory in the pits. It is the case as Kurt Van Hoenacker has had an off somewhere. We've got a lot of smoke. Darren Doherty as well has had an incident. We see that's Van Hoenacker there off circuit. And as they come through the corner here, Van Hoenacker rejoins safely here. But meanwhile, we can see that is the case that Stock breaking away as we look a little bit further down the order here. And we see it is Kurt Van Hoenacker who is under pressure. Well, he's putting some pressure on Jeremy who's passed him after his rejoin here, but meanwhile we see that Bobby Thompson is now in the, well, it is the case that he's into the lead after taking his second pit stop, and he has come back out in the lead. And where is Melvin or Deschamps or company? Well, Deschamps is just behind him here, and it's the case Oystein Herford's in for his second stop. He is in the pits right now, and then we've got Kenny Heremans here in P4, and then Harry Melvin after his second stop is all the way down here in P5 coming onto what is the hanger straight right now. And Melvin's strategy here, where it may give him the opportunity to jump Heremans, Herford and also Deschamps, but I think that one little incident plus the fact he's had a longer second stop, it has cost him the ability to chase Thompson down for the win. I think even if so, this would be a very strong performance here from Melvin if he could bring it home in P2. We'll have to wait and see, of course, how it all plays out. I think, in fact, Heremans has already had his second stop, so Heremans is out ahead of what is Melvin here. And in fact, Hereford is now coming out of the pits very shortly. I can see he's just coming out of his pit box right now. And as the cameras pan around, Melvin has dropped all the way down to P5 here for his second stop. So as a result, he's now got to try and get himself onto the podium once again. He will charge to do so here, but it's Heremans now up into P3, and then Jean-Louis Deschamps, who is due one more pit stop here. How will he factor into all this in the battle for the podium? We will have to wait and find out, but it's definitely brewing up to a big one right at the end right now with only 25 minutes to go, and there has been plenty to talk about so far in this race, and we expect there's going to be still plenty more to come in the remaining time of the race. You do not want to go anywhere, ladies and gentlemen. We can expect it is going to really build up to a finale right now. We may have a race leader who's dominating out front, and that of course is Bobby Thompson, but further down the order we have got a lot of battles building up and getting closer and closer. And looking a bit further down, you can see George Bland here right at the back of a chasing pattern, and it has not worked out for Bland on the strategy call as he has come out in what is effectively P6 in the outer class. But you can see there how we've got the back marker of what is, I believe that is Van Hoenacker, who's gone a little bit deep there. This will give Bland an additional toe down what is the hanger straight here, and that McLaren is already very fast as he flashes his lights. Van Hoenacker moves out the way, and you can see Bland on Addy trying to find that move as soon as possible here, but he's a bit too far back into 15 this time around. But Addy goes a bit wide there, and Bland is inching ever closer. As meanwhile we see in the front of your picture that's Emmons versus what is Jeremy DeBova there, and Emmons will not want to lose time to the driver who is a lap down on him, of course, as they make their way through what is turns 17 and 18 and head on to another lap of racing. On to lap 46 they go, and Bland is looking for the move here versus Addy into turn 1. He's not going to find it. If I was Bland, I would look for it into turns 3, 4 and 5 as we jump on board here with the McLaren driver who's doing everything he can to try and find a way through in the McLaren MP4 12C as they come into turn 3. And you can see how Addy going a little bit prematurely defensive, I would argue, there into 3, but I think he's just trying to take the sting out of Bland's moves here as Deschamps is coming out of the pit right now in the battle for the podium up top overall. And we can see that we have got Jeremy DeBova moving out the way, and he's going to come back on the circuit very shortly. And as he does here, it is the case that he rejoins, and he's rejoined in the path of what is Bland there, who Bland just literally mercilessly saying, right, I'm just coming through whether you like it or not. And we can see, meanwhile, there's the case that Matt Emmons has lost time now. And I think there may have been some contact between himself and Jeremy DeBova as they're making their way through. DeBova is at the back of this pack right now. We're not 100% sure there, but what I can tell you is that it's intensifying. And Jean-Louis Deschamps has come out in P4 behind Oystein Herford. He's 3.2 seconds down as Matt Emmons continues to just gradually fade in and out of existence in this lobby. We can see some smoke there at turn number 9, and Addy goes wide out of 9 now. The track limits penalties will, of course, really start to be in the minds of our drivers as they make their way through turns 10 through to 14 here, and you can see at the back of your picture Debova really struggling to get the car through turn 11, but as they make their way through 13 and 14, looking at our battle here for what is P4 in the amateur class, you have to imagine that Addy's not going to have much momentum here as they come out of 14, going a bit deep through 13, as they do. Bland on the outside, he's going to look to go all the way round here. This is going to be very brave stuff from Bland if he's going to pull it off, but Addy will go defensive. He's very late on the brakes in that Ferrari. They make their way through the right-hander here of 15, and as they come through the corner, no change as it currently stands, as they come romping down towards turn number 16 here. Bland holding on for the time being. He's made the swing all the way round and continues to press on in P15 as Addy was not able to make the move back on him there, and Bland got the job done. But as they come out of the corner and head down towards turn number 1 once again, we can see that Addy now looking to come back at Bland here. There's no breakaway from Bland. There's no way he's getting close enough to Evans to turn it back into a freeway fight for the time being, but Addy goes a bit deep into 1, and as a result, as they come through 2 and into 3 here, Addy looks deep on the brakes but not able to find an entry point, instead having to wait for another opportunity as they come through turn number 4 here. And we can see, I believe that Ben Hicks has also retired, as we've had the retirement of Hicks as well. In fact, that's not accurate. I think Hicks is just coming out the pits right now, but we focus on the battling here and now. We're hearing that Tom Porter and the Road Debova both have separate incidents out on circuit right now, but meanwhile, looking further up the field, we can see that it's Harry Melvin chasing after Jean-Louis Deschamps for P4 overall and P4 in the Pro class here. Delta Motorsport ahead of Igneo Motorsport here, and we can see that at the moment the Porsche driver had to find a way to hold off the fast charging Lamborghini as they come through turns 5 and into 6. They will drop shortly as they go charging down what is the Wellington Straight here. Into the braking zone they come, and it looks as though here Melvin's going to go for the move, but he's gone very, very late on the brakes. He's trailed it in and he's nailed it. Melvin there with a very brave pass versus Jean-Louis Deschamps. That took a lot of bravery and he got it done very late on the brakes there. Now, meanwhile, I'm hearing that Matt Evans has been passed by Addy, and in fact, I think Evans has had an off somewhere. Something has gone very wrong here. What has happened to Evans? So they made their way out of what looked to be turn number, I think that there was turn number 7, and Emmons ran wide and as a result lost all the momentum, and then Addy, as they were making their way up towards turn number 9 here, is it just the case that Addy went all the way round? Well, as they went through 9 here, we can see Emmons locked up under braking with some dirt on the tyres as well, and Addy just simply came through. So Emmons losing 2 places there for the price of 1. And he comes into the pits there, and that is for a 3rd stop. So I think Emmons probably is worried about flat spot on the tyres, or potentially a puncture on the tyres, building a slow puncture perhaps. But meanwhile, Jean-Louis Deschamps trying to come back here at Melvin. He's not close enough to do so this time around with 20 minutes to go here. And as a result now, with everybody practically having taken their 2 mandatory stops, any more pit stops are more likely to be unscheduled emergency stops. And instead it will be the case now. Everybody is sprinting to the finish, perhaps managing the car and fuel or protecting the tyres, but no more pit stops expected from anyone right now as we take a quick sip of water before we start to bring this one home. And with 20 minutes remaining, ladies and gentlemen, the one thing I can tell you for certain right now is that unless he has a major incident at this point on his debut here, Bobby Thompson doing a phenomenal job. The Next Gen Racing with Barracuda Motorsport driver here, charging through the corners left, right and centre here, and leading by a significant distance of 44.5 seconds over P2 man Kenny Heremans here, who's got Oystein Hereford all over the back of him. Oystein has really closed up over the last couple of laps, but particularly that last lap, well, in fact, that last lap in particular, a 204.3 for Heremans, a 202.59 for Hereford. It was the case that Hereford's been stripping 1 or 2 seconds a lap out of Heremans as they make their way down towards turn number 9 here, and you can see the pressure is building, and as they come into the right-hander, I do think it might be the case right now as we see Heremans goes deep there into 9, he runs wide, and he will be side by side here versus Hereford, but Hereford's going to have the run into turn number 11, and you can see Heremans backing off of it as Hereford has got the move done, the Norwegian up into P2 now, and really this is the manifestation of what has been a very strong performance from the Norwegian. Not to say that Heremans has not put in a good performance either, but Hereford has really had to find his way through the field time and time again, particularly against the Lamborghinis, and that BMW seems to be dancing in his hands right now. As we see there, just further back in the camera shot, we've got Harry Melvin closing up on the pair of them, and will Melvin be able to go on the offensive for the podium right at the end here as they make their way through? And we are hearing that Nigel Stock has passed Deardy Devalaming for what is at the time right now. We can see that he's gained the position of what is... It's quite far way down the order. He's gained the position of P11 as Valaming has had an instant off circuit. In fact, let's take a look back at what happened to Deardy Devalaming. Making his way through turn number 16, that's Stock in the rear view picture there, and then through 17, and the car's going to go wide onto the sausage curb. Oh, that is very unfortunate for Laming, and very fortunate for the Mercedes there that came through to miss him. But looking back at our live pictures, Melvin has got the move done on Kenny Herremans as we took one cut away. Now we'll just wait and see if Herremans is able to find a way back through, but I do not think so. So let's take a look back at the pass. As it was going through turn 2 here, and just the momentum that Melvin had on the inside into 3, it is the case that Harry Melvin really on a charge here, and I do think Herremans right now is nursing his tyres through to the end of the race here, and Melvin could be within a shot of P2. I do not think he'll be able to close down the upwards of 45 seconds there, Thompson, but Melvin really will be the second best. He will be the best of the rest here, and he has shown it throughout the race with what has been a very strong performance from Melvin through and through. You do have to wonder what he could have done, however, if there weren't for that little incident with Boschel, but I think it would have been inevitable for him to drop back into P2, but right now he's on a mission to get P2 back. Will he be able to get it? He is 7.5 tenths off of Oisin Hereford ahead of him, but can Harry Melvin close it down with 16 minutes to go? Place your bets, ladies and gentlemen. I think it's going to be very close between the two of them, because the thing is, Melvin is fast, but we know Hereford really knows how to plant that BMW versus the Lamborghinis. We have seen it time and time again, and we will wait and find out which one is going to come out on top here. As we see Gareth Mills there just moving out the way. Oh, the pair of them will stay clear of them as they both make their way past him, and behind you can see there in P5 closed up to Herremans is Jean-Louis Deschamps here as they come up into turn number 15, and I suspect the number 55 car is going to go for a move. Hold on a second, what has happened here versus, well, I think Hereford's just had an off or something, because he's lost a position already, and it is the case that right now we can see that Harry Melvin has gained it. Now that was very quick. I thought it was going to build up to a bit more than that. Let's just take a look back at what has happened. So coming out of what was turn 15, and you can see there, it's the fact that it looks like Hereford's actually backed off there and let Melvin through. I think he doesn't want to fight. I think it's the case that he's aware of the fact that Melvin is the faster of the two drivers, or perhaps it's the case that right now Hereford's having to do fuel saving. He decided to lift out of it there, coming out of 15, in order to do a little bit of fuel saving coming down into 16. But that was very unexpected, as we see Jean-Louis Deschamps has just completed the move for what is P4 versus Herremans there, and we'll just take a look back at what happened there very shortly, as I do not think Herremans is going to have the momentum to come back at him. As they made their way into turn number 4, you can see that Gareth Mills moving out the way of the pair of them, and I think Herremans just hesitated to go past the back marker. Meanwhile, Jean-Louis Deschamps pretty much said, okay, if the space is there, I'll go between the two of you and do a Moses manoeuvre into turn 4, and that is how Deschamps is now up into P4. But meanwhile, a little bit further back, I can tell you that George Bland, meanwhile, hot on the heels of Alexander Batak here. This is for P3 in the amateur class, P13 overall. Batak is the BMW at the front. George Bland in the very flavoursome coloured McLaren behind right now. The M4 versus the MP4 12C. Which one's going to come out top? We know that BMW struggles on the straight here. Down the hanger straight they come. And you can see Batak staying to the racing line here. But Bland's going to go to the inside. But he's not close enough to trail it in on the inside under braking here. The BMW struggle with the brakes. But we can see Batak's got a little bit wide, but he's collected the car just in time as they now come down into the braking zone for what is turn number 16 here, and Bland trying to find a way through. He wants to be back on that podium here. He knows that every point is critical as they come through 17 and into 18. You can see that Bland's got the momentum out of these medium speed corners, but he just does not have the space to get alongside us. You see Mark Sykes moving out the way there for the Mercedes behind. That's the Mercedes of Jamie Dury in the Pro class, but right now Bland backing off a little bit from Batak, not able to carry the momentum through into what was their turn number 3, and as they come all the way through the corner, we can see now he's going to start to close up once again on the offensive here as they come through turn number 4, and that McLaren looking very fiery indeed as they come out of 4 and heading up into 5. Now what can he do, Bland? Well, as we ride on board here, we'll try and give you an idea of where he may be looking for it. We know that the BMW is the stronger handling car of the two of them and is very, very strong in its brakes. But as they make their way into 6, we can see very similar lines, although Batak getting a little bit of an understeer there, and then countering with some oversteer through turn number 6, and the car looking a bit unsettled in its back as they come through turn number 7. And you can see how Bland getting a very strong run out of 7, very tight to the apex here. And as they make their way through turn number 8 right now, I do think Bland's going to be in with a chance here as they make their way in the run down towards turn number 9. And we can see he's going to be made to go all the way around the outside of it. He's going to go for it, but he backs out of it there. He looks instead for the momentum coming through 9 up into 10. But Tack goes deep through the corner there. And as they come in the drag race up towards 10 and 11 right now, which one of them will back out? That's the big question. And it's the case that Bland backs out, knowing there's only one way through, but he's going to be right in the slipstream of what is Batak's BMW as they come through 13 and 14 here. If he can stay close out of 13 and get the launch here, he will have a phenomenal run. And he's 3/10 back. I think he's a little bit further back than he'd like to be, but he's going to try and make this one count as they make the charge here up towards turn number 15. And you can see Batak at the head of this pair. He's not going to give in, and as they make their way through, it is the case that Bland, in fact, backing off considerably now. So I think something's gone wrong with Bland's car. Hold on a second, Bland has got a problem. Bland has definitely got a problem with that car. I think he may have picked up a puncher, because that is not looking good. Alternatively, something has broken on that car, because he has lost a lot of time there, and he's in fact dropped to Jamie Dory. Now, has he just simply decided to back out of it? Perhaps he's noticed that the fuel is wrong, but that does not look a happy McLaren right now, and we're trying to figure out what's wrong with that car from our pictures here. But he's backed off considerably there right at the end of the lap. Perhaps he's just waiting for another opportunity. We will wait and see. We've still got 12 minutes, well, 11 and a half minutes of racing to go, ladies and gentlemen, but this is not looking good for Bland, who's just backed out of that completely, and he's now the best part of what is 2.5 seconds off of Alexander Batak. But meanwhile, as the racing continues on, we can see a little bit further up front here, we've got Harry Melvin, who has just cleared some of the back markers. That's Matthew Addy and also Navarro de Bova there. And Oested Heff trying to fight a way through the pair of them right now as well. I think Navarro de Bova is 2 laps down, whereas Addy is 1 lap down by comparison here as they make their way through it. Of course, it is the case as they come up into turn 5. Addy needs to be wary of the fact he's got a BMW on the lead lap trying to charge through here. Of course, Addy will not want to lose time, but they make their way through all the same. It's side by side here, going up into turn number 6. They're not battling for position, however, even though it may look like it. But meanwhile, looking back to what is the situation for Batak versus, well, Dory and Bland. So Dory, the pro driver here, trying to make his way through the field of amateur drivers. But we can see that Bland is now starting to build up a bit more momentum here. He's 1.1 seconds back now. And I do think Batak as well is struggling a little bit with lap time as it currently stands, as we're hearing that Tom Porter is into the pit lane from P18 and Mikkel Andreasen is now up into P18. As we see here, Batak is holding a position right now, and as they make their way through what is turn at 14 and charge down towards number 15 once again here down the hanger straight, you can see the Mercedes there of Dory looking for a potential move here, and I think Batak's going to let this one go as they make their way into the round. He's got enough space here to Bland, but he has lost a lot of momentum through 15 here, and Bland will be wary of that. I think Bland perhaps just simply backed off for 1 or 2 laps and is now going on the offensive once again as they come through turns 16 and 17, and then it will be 18 as they come through the double right. And see, Bland's going for the move early here, but he's just a little bit too enthusiastic, I think, going into 18. There's only really one way through there, but you can see Bland is definitely now looking at a second chance in the move here. I think he just backed off it. Perhaps he felt that he was pushing himself a bit too hard in that previous attempt and is now waiting for that opportunity as they come through turns 3 and then into 4 and 5 very shortly here. And will Bland be able to do it? That will be the big question, as we see that Jamie Dory has now started to disappear a bit further off up the road, and it is Bland versus Batak for P14 and what is P3 in the amateur class here overall, with 9 minutes to go as we ride backwards here from Batak's car, and you can see George Bland's McLaren getting closer and closer as we speak. As they come through 6 here, it is the case that both drivers taking a very deep line, although you can see there Bland taking a very unconventional line through 6, and look how close he's getting to the back here of what is Batak's car as they come out the corner. A tiny little tap of contact there, and as they make their way out of 7 and now through turn 8, what I would say right now is that Bland definitely thinks that he's got it on this lap. I think he's going to go for it. He won't go for it in 9. Surely he's not going to go to the inside into 9 here. He's looking for it, but he's backed out at the last moment. He's going to stay right and close behind versus Batak, and he's trying to get in the head of the Dane as they make their the way through the corner here, and as they come down towards 10 and 11, it's the case they're going to be side by side again here, but Bland backs out of it. 9, there's only one way through here. He's going to try and do the same thing that he did on the previous lap. He's going to try and sling it out 13 and get the momentum down into 15. Now look how close he is, and Bland is all the way on the inside here of what is the slipstream zone of attack here. This is his prime opportunity. He has got to go for it now if he wants this. He's going to look for the move attack defense the inside, and as they come down into the braking zone here, it's the case that Bland is made to go all the way around under braking, but we can see Batak carries a lot of speed in here, but will Bland be able to cut it back in down towards turn number 16 as they come down the hill here? Bland looks to the outside once again. He's trying to find a cutback, and as they make the way into the brake zone here, we can see Batak planting it on apex and parking the car very nicely through turn 17, and we can see Bland getting a little bit of snap oversteer on entry into 17 there. Bland definitely pushing the limits of what that McLaren is capable of right now. He knows he hasn't got many more laps, roughly 4 more laps to go after this, and as he comes across them to go on to lap number 54 right now, these drivers will be absolutely exhausted. I can tell you that Batak, when he finished the races at Le Mans, was shattered, particularly after the feature race 60 minutes long. He's doing double distance here at Silverstone, and you can see he's trying to do everything he can to hold on, but Bland goes to the inside here into 4. He's not able to find it. However, Batak just putting his car in places where Bland cannot get the accelerator down, and that as a result is enabling the BMW to stay in position right now. But this is getting ever closer as they make their way down towards turn 6 once again, and I do think in a minute it is going to be a question of Bland having to try and make an unconventional move here and try and catch Batak out. Will he be able to do it? As we see, they make their way into 7, and Bland goes a little bit wide into 7. He's looking for the acceleration line out of the corner here. Batak taking the more conventional tight line, and as they make their way through 8 and up in towards 9 once again, the Switchback Motorsport driver continues to hold on versus George Bland, the M&B Esports driver, as they make their way in towards turn number 9 here. You can see no way through this time, but Bland all over the back once again, and you can see behind him there we do have what is the back marker of Jeremy Debova just watching on, but Bland looking closer here into 10 and 11, this time just sneaking himself on the inside here. As how will the Porsche behind him trying to unlap itself get involved in all of this, or will it just spectate with a front row view to the battle for P14 as they make their way out to turn number 14 here, and Batak's gone onto the grass very briefly. That's costing the momentum. It's Bland versus Batak as they come down the hanger straight. Bland on the outside, Batak on the inside. It's a drag race down towards the braking zone here, and into turn 15 they go, and will it be the case? It's the same as last time. It looks as though Batak's nailed it on the brakes on the inside, and Bland goes very wide and tries to hold that outside line. He's still there on the outside, is Bland, and he's got the inside here into turn number 16. He goes for it late on the brakes here, does Bland. There's no contact so far. The two are keeping it clean, and side by side through 17 they go here, and as they accelerate out, Batak holds on versus Bland for a little bit longer as they make their way through 18. Bland is made to go wide there out of the corner as they come across that timeline here, and as they come onto what is lap number 55, it's the case that Bland is ahead, but I do not think it'll be for long before there is a change of position. Paul King has just moved up into P5 off camera. We'll take a look back at that shortly, but Batak is trying to come back right now with 5 minutes to go, with 3 laps remaining for these guys, and we see Batak has gone deep. Batak has made a mistake, and I think that is going to enable Bland to break away. What a brilliant pair of moves between the drivers. They're side by side for a very narrow sequence of corners through 15 all the way down towards what was the start finish line, and you've got to give credit to Batak for putting up that defense, but Bland in the end has got the pace and he has planted it. But meanwhile, looking up to P5, we see that Paul King is now up into that P5 position. He's got past Heremans, who is really struggling for pace right now, and let's take a look at what happened in the battle for P5. So drag race down towards turn 15, and it was the case that King went for the move on the inside here. Now Heremans did stay in. He's had a little bit of a snap oversteer moment there, and the car just simply did not want to go through the corner, and that's how King got up into P5. But looking back at your live pictures right now, I think those are the last 2 big battles, unless anybody makes a sudden mistake or gets, pardon me, reeled in here. We are looking at the times on our screen right now, and nobody putting in absolute monster times by comparison. Although I should say that Harry Melvin is flying right now and matching Bobby Thompson's times, and it's very impressive here, but he is 46.5 seconds down on Thompson right now, so Thompson could afford to run the car in a much lower fuel mode here, and Melvin just trying to flash the lights to Batak here to say to him, if you could politely move out the way, sir, I'd really appreciate it. We just look a little bit further down the order right now, and we can see Jean-Louis Deschamps in P4. He is 3.1 seconds down on Øystein Hereford there, who's at the front of your pitch of the BMW going into turn 15. Deschamps now just making his way into turn 15. The gap between them, 3.2 seconds, and Hereford just lapping at the same pace, the Norwegian, as our Belgian driver here, as we watch him make his way down into 16. So I do not think there's going to be any sudden changes between these guys. Meanwhile, in the battle for the lead of the amateur class here, we see Ollie Wayne the best part of 13 seconds ahead of Nigel Stock right now, and in a very comfortable position is Ollie Wayne, and it has definitely been a night to return to the series, and it's worked out for him massively. Missing out on Le Mans, of course, being away, but now being back, he's back in business, and Nigel Stock, who is 13 seconds down on him in the Lamborghini, doing a very good job, is the English driver right now. And he's got an ample gap here of what is around 13 to 14 seconds versus George Bland, who, of course, having just passed Alexander Batak, is now making his way home in P3 in the amateur class, P14 overall. But as we can see, 2.5 minutes remaining right now, and it is the case that this race is being brought to a close very gradually as all of our drivers continue to make their way round, and it is the case right now for Bobby Thompson, our race leader. He's on his 57th lap currently, and if he gets across the finish line with 2 minutes and 5 seconds to spare, I do suspect we will get 2 more laps of racing. We will wait and see as he comes out of what is turn number 17 and into 18 here. I think it may be the case. It's a little bit too late to get a 59th lap in, but we will wait and see as he's gone across that timeline. He's on to lap 58. It may be the final lap. We will wait and see, ladies and gentlemen. It's going to be nip and tuck. He may lift off at the very end, or he may push it to do a 59th lap. We will wait and see, but it has been a phenomenal race from Thompson, and nobody can fault him for it. He's led this one from very early on, and he's never let go of the lead. And Harry Melvin right now in P2. But despite the fact he's been feeling unwell from what we're hearing in the chat from Paul Melvin in the YouTube chat, he has done a phenomenal job to be in P2, and the strategy has worked out for him. Even when he's had incidents, he's worked it out and he's made it count here. And I think P2 was the best he could do today, and this is a phenomenal performance from the Briton as he makes his way onto what will be his 58th lap of the Silverstone circuit. And Øystein Hereford here, he's not being reeled in, he's matching the pace of Jean-Louis Deschamps here and holding on, as I'm hearing that Matthew Addy has just had an off here. I think he's just simply run wide out of turn number 13. We look back here to live pictures, and as he's making his way through 12 here into 13, does the rear of the car just snap under braking? No, in fact, it goes very deep, and instead he's locked up and he's decided just to release the car and let it drift naturally because he had the space to do so on the circuit. But it's been a difficult race for Addy in the end in P5 as he's coming into the pits. So I think he's got a problem with the car, and if that's the case, this would promote Matt Emmons up into P5 in the amateur class here at the very last minute, and Mikael Andreasen as well could benefit from this as he makes his way through turns 11 through to 14 right now. We will wait and see, but that is a last minute pit stop for Addy, and that is a bit of a disaster if so. But meanwhile, as he makes his way through turn 15, we'll wait to see if he's going to creep across the line to do one more lap. If he doesn't, it has been a strong performance on his debut here in the Next Gen Racing GT3 iRacing Series 2, sorry, Season 2 I should say. But as he makes his way through the final couple of corners here, it's going to be Bobby Thompson from Barracuda Motorsport with Next Gen Racing who comes out the final corner to take one more lap of the circuit. He's just crept across the line there, folks, so we will get 59 laps. Cheeky, very cheeky. They're not letting us finish his graces there, but we will wait and see him as he comes across the line in 1 lap's time. But meanwhile, looking further down the order, this really for me is the driver who, it shows you, sometimes have to dig incredibly deep to get a result. And Edward Lack here, assuming that nothing goes wrong on his final lap, he has had to come all the way through the amateur field in that pro car to get himself up into P7 overall and P7 in the pro category. And whilst it hasn't worked out today, he is now attacking Kenny Heremans on the final lap, and this could be his opportunity here because Heremans is going the best part of 4 seconds slower than Lack on the previous lap. And as they make their way through 13 and 14, I think it's going to be a formality into turn 15 here as they drag race their way then out to turn 14 and head down the hangar straight. And you can see already Lack's already on alongside before they've even got into the main straight. And as they come charging down here, it will be the case. Lack's going to be on the inside. The two cars very even on straight line speed, and into the braking zone they go, and Lack gets himself up into P6 there, and that will be, I think, the last place he gains here today. As meanwhile with Addy pitting, I can tell you that Matt Emmons has gained the place, but Matthew Addy, meanwhile, is now a little bit further ahead of Andreasen, so he's safe from Andreasen. But meanwhile, here is our race leader in the same shot right now, making his way through the final set of corners, and this will be the final lap, ladies and gentlemen, as we have gone beyond the 120-minute limit right now. But we will just wait to see him through as he comes under the Johnny Walker billboard down the hanger straight. And as we were saying earlier, Bobby Thompson with a brilliant performance today. The number 19 driver here as he makes his way out of 15 and heads down towards 16 here. It's been a faultless performance on his debut in the Mercedes. And if he does continue in this series as he makes his way to the checkered flag, you can only imagine how much of an impact he will have on the championship. As he comes out the final corner then, Bobby Thompson takes the win in round number 6 of the Next Gen iRacing GT3 season. And we can see that it's a brilliant result. Flash his lights there and very pleased as he takes the checkered flag. Meanwhile, it will be a P2 for Harry Melvin, who as he makes his way down the hanger straight, whilst despite feeling unwell, he's battled on. He has fought every step of the way, and it has been a performance. And Ollie Wayne, as he comes out the final corner in the amateur class, will take the win in the amateur class here in round number 6 at Silverstone. A brilliant drive from Wayne and back on form here, and a very strong performance, taking the fight to George Bland, and definitely it will be close between the two of them going into round number 7 in the championship. But meanwhile, Melvin here making his way then out of the final corners, and as he comes around, he will take P2 overall and P2 in the pro category. A brilliant drive from Melvin, and behind there you can see Nigel Stock has already crossed the line to take second place in the amateur class, and then George Bland with P3 in the amateur class. A good drive from Bland. I think he'll be ruining what could have been today, and Oystein Hereford takes P3 in the end as he crosses the finish line there in the pro category. A brilliant drive from the Norwegian, a very strong effort and battling on the brakes. Jean-Louis Deschamps in P4 then, and Paul King comes out of the final corner here. The Indian Motorsport driver rounding off our top 5 in the pro category. A great drive from Paul King, crossing the line there in P5. And Edward Lack, as he comes out the final corner, as we said earlier, the battler of the day and the driver who dug so deep to recover to P6 in the end, but a fantastic drive as he crosses the line. And it's Kenny Heremans who creeps along the line, and P7 there seemingly falling off the pace right at the end, but it has worked out for him. It will be Jakub Boschov in P8 as he makes his way through. And we're just seeing all of our drives come across the line right now. And I do appreciate some drives in the amateur class have already come through. But we can see Jakub Boschov will come home in P8. A good effort from Boschov and a difficult one out there for him today as he crosses that finish line. Andrew Lovesey has already finished in P9. And then I believe that is everybody accounted for on the lead lap. And Matt Emmons, in fact, making his way out and will be coming home in P5 in the end. A great effort from Emmons. Wasn't to be a podium today, but still a strong performance from Emmons and one to build upon going into round number 7 into the second half of the season. But to take you through then, ladies and gentlemen, with regards to amateur class, Ollie Wayne in the win in the end. A brilliant drive from Wayne, and Nigel Stock P2. And then we had P3 for George Bland as he's coming around right now. And then P4 for Alexander Batak, who held on as long as he could versus Bland, but it wasn't to be a podium for him today. And then, of course, Matt Emmons there in P5. And then as our drivers are heading, Matthew Addy in P6, Mikael Andreasen P7, Tom Porter in what was P8, Mark Sykes P9, and then Darren Doherty in P10 for the amateurs. But that brings to a conclusion all of our racing, ladies and gentlemen. But don't go anywhere. We'll be back in about 5 minutes' time for some post-race interviews with our winners of both the pro and the amateur classes. Alrighty, ladies and gentlemen. Well, given we haven't been quite able to grab Bobby Thompson at the moment, we're going to start off with our amateur race winner, and that is Ollie Wayne. And we're just going to get him into the interview box. Hello, Ollie. Can you hear me?
Can indeed. How are you doing?
Very good, thank you. How about yourself?
A bit sweaty after that, to be honest.
Well, congratulations on what was a grueling win at Silverstone. How does it feel to have won the first 2-hour endurance event of the season?
Absolutely brilliant. Yeah, had some awesome racing with George and Matt almost all the way through that, and there was some pretty sketchy moments, but we just gave each other space and could sort of race in respect. Yeah, really, really good.
So taking it all the way back to the race start, so obviously starting right at the back of the field effectively, what your championship placement. Just take us through the opening couple of laps, because we saw you come through the field rather rapidly, but you seemed to come through with Matt, with George, with Stock, and it was a very rapid climb through the field.
Well, the first lap was just staying out of the carnage, and then after that, me, Matt, and George all kind of sort of came together, and we were all talking on the Discord anyway. So we're kind of working together, and you know, you lose so much time fighting. We were just if one of us was in front, the other one would just sit behind and just work our way forwards and not lose time.
And in working together and not trying to lose time, how quickly did you move from thinking about sort of trying to gain places at the sort of opening, say 20 or 30 minutes of the race, to just thinking about the strategy? Or was the strategy always sort of at the forefront of your mind?
Pretty much as soon as me and George were sort of together, I think that was kind of what we were both sort of thinking. And then it kind of once the pit stops sort of happened, we ended up on different strategies, and then we were just kind of fighting from then on, really.
And then with the strategy coming in, so just take us through what your approach was, because we saw you had quite a long pit stop to begin with in the end of stint number one, but stint number two, you had a very fast pit stop.
Yeah, so I took tyres at the first pit stop, um, just with the thinking that I'm gonna do the whole second stint and then basically like two full tanks. I want fresh tyres for as long as I can. But I suppose it doesn't really make much difference. But yeah, I just preferred to have them at the sort of start of the race and then for the start, and then once I had a bit more open track, I sort of settle into a bit of rhythm and look after them a bit better.
Because it definitely worked out, and we saw, particularly in the transition from the second stint to the final stint, how you essentially had so much space to play with, and really, you just jumped the amateur field. You just disappeared off up the road. You're no longer in that pack, if you will. With regards to that jump from that point to the end, given the fact that being up front by such a distance, was there a sort of a drop off to say 90%, or was it the case of pushing all the way to the end?
I did kind of think that, but I've had bad experiences in the past when I try not to drive flat out, where I end up making silly mistakes. And then when Bobby come past, because he's in the same car, I was like, oh, how he can do lap time, so I can do lap time. But obviously, I couldn't. But I gave it a good go.
Understandably so, but from one winner to another, so from Bobby's perspective to your perspective, just appreciate it's a bit of a sudden question, but given the fact we just ended the first half of the season, and really this race is probably the highest point of the momentum that you could take into the second half of the season, just take us through how it feels now, because you're in the championship fight with George Bland. You've built up a huge amount of momentum, and it's 100 points on the board today for yourself. What are things looking like going into the second half for you?
Yeah, pretty good, really. I've not really thought about it, to be honest. Just take it race by race, and I'm sure everyone's going to have a bit more bad luck as the championship goes on. So hopefully, I'll just be able to sort of carry on and keep getting the points.
And in terms of looking ahead, so the next race, Hockenheim in Germany, how are you feeling?
I don't really know that track very well, to be honest. So I'm going to have to have some practice. But I'm really looking forward to the next 2 hours. I think it's at Spa, isn't it?
Yes, the final race of the season's at Spa for the 2 hours.
Yeah, yeah, really looking forward to that one. I do prefer the longer races because there's a bit more thought involved with the strategy and everything.
I see, and I assume that's why we've seen over the course, particularly in this first half of the season, you've really come alive in the feature races when you've got that 60 minutes to deploy the pace rather than the 15 minutes. So is that where your focus more is on the more endurance races rather than the sprints?
Yeah, I mean, I enjoy sprint racing because I do sprint racing, in my normal racing, but I don't seem to have the pace in sim racing to be up there with the quick lads. But when it comes to endurance race, I don't know if it's because I can maybe look after the tyres better or what, but yeah, it does just seem to suit my driving style a little bit better.
Oh, well, it's definitely working out at the moment, and I can imagine if you're able to nail down your sprint pace as well, you're going to be such a force to contend with. I don't think anyone's going to be able to catch you, but congratulations on the win once again, and we look forward to seeing you at the German circuit in a week's time and what you can do there.
That's awesome. Thanks very much.
No problem. You have a lovely evening.
You too. Cheers.
We could hear there, ladies and gentlemen, Ollie very happy with his performance today. And talking about the fact, much happier with the longer races in terms of the 2 hour endurance, and already looking forward to Spa at the end of the season, the 2 hour endurance race, the second of our 2 hour endurance races, the Belgian circuit, which will be in round number 12. And if he can nail that sprint pace down, as he was saying there, whilst in real world racing, he's quite strong in sprint pace, but in the sim world, on iRacing, for example, it's somewhere where perhaps it's a weakness. You can only imagine if he's able to nail down his sprint pace, I think we could be looking at the guy to dominate the amateur championship. But it's very close between him and Bland, and I wouldn't rule out Bland, because we saw again today Bland's capabilities in that McLaren very strong as well. Now, we are waiting to see if Bobby Thompson will join us. I'm not sure if he's already left the circuit. I think he may have left the circuit. So if that is the case, then unfortunately we will not be able to have an interview with him, but a very strong performance from Bobby Thompson all the same. And we look forward to potentially seeing him come back into the series for the second half. Of course, tonight was his one-off debut, but we will wait to see if he's confirmed as part of the racing grid going forward. Now, before we come on to a wrap-up, it's time just for a quick word from one of our sponsors. Well, as we had another word there from one of our senior sponsors, Apex Racing Academy, for this series, which we're very grateful to be working with them, and also Next Level Racing. Thank you very much for tuning in tonight, ladies and gentlemen. It's been a pleasure to bring you round 6 of the NXTGEN Racing iRacing GT3 Championship Season 2. And if you do want to know more about the NXTGEN Racing community, what we do, and on top of that, the series we run and how you can get involved, then be sure to check us out on our official website. That's nextgenracing.co.uk. And on top of that, the NXTGEN Racing Facebook group. That is facebook.com/groups/NextGen Racing. Again, a big thank you to our partners without whom this would not be possible. Apex Racing Academy, that's apexracingac.com, and also Next Level Racing, that's nextlevelracing.com. And next time, in a week's time, ladies and gentlemen, we go back to the standard format, which is the Hockenheim Ring, the 2 races. Round number 7, Wednesday the 1st of September 2021, the sprint and the feature race, and of course the all-important qualifying session ahead of it. But until then, we have to wait and salivate at what can be, as we just briefly see here Øystein Herford taking his BMW M4 around the German circuit just to give us a teaser of what's in store, but a very different circuit from Silverstone. Silverstone all about high downforce and speed. Meanwhile, Hockenheim a little bit more tricky, a little bit slower overall in terms of average speeds, but plenty of overtaking opportunities. And we do indeed look forward to it. So until then, ladies and gentlemen, remember to stay safe, stay well, stay smiling, but most importantly, remember to stay on track. I have been your host, Paul TX1 from Walsh, also known as Britain a Spit, and until next time, good night.